Hey guys, come in. I like to allow you to load up before we get started. When you come in, let me know that you're in by leaving me a comment or something. Let me know that you're on. Let me know that you're on so that we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to give it a minute or two, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. Hey, gorgeous ladies. Peace and blessings, sis. Thank you. Hey, gorgeous. All right. So today, I'm going to let a few more people come in. Hey, gorgeous. I love to see you guys coming in. Some of you, I've gotten to know your faces and your names so much, and I'm always excited to see y'all. I'm always excited to see y'all. All right, so today, I'm trying to give it another minute because I have a disclaimer that I want a lot of people to hear before we get started, because I believe a lot of people, if they don't get the disclaimer, they come straight in and they'll come in on a part and end up getting offended, and I don't want that to happen. I mean, I do understand people are going to come in at any given time, but I want to make sure that people come in I want people to come in, as many people as possible, to hear the disclaimer so that you can know my heart in this. That's my thing, is I really want you guys to know my heart in this. And of course, one of the things I said, when the Lord gave me this topic to tackle, one of the things I said is, I'm like every other African American. I don't like tackling these type of subjects, and the reason for that is because it's been very sensitive. We're still very sensitive to the subject of slavery. We're still very sensitive to a lot of the things that happen, and so in the African American race, there are certain things that if we say, people end up getting offended, even though it's true. We just don't like to hear the truth. And me having seen a lot of people, especially older people who dealt with pride, I've come to understand that to break through pride, you have to tell the truth. And that's the one thing that most of us are afraid to do, because we don't want to deal with the offense. We don't want to deal with people getting upset. And so I think that when you start dealing with older people, you start realizing the necessity of pushing past that person's offense to tell them the truth. Hey, you're going to need this regardless of what you say. I understand what you say. You don't want to go here or you don't want to do that. I understand that. But you're going to have to get off your high horse and humble yourself so that you can get whatever help that you need or what have you. And so I've come to understand that when you're dealing with offense, you have to push past it. When you have a family member who needs the truth, you have to push past their offense. If they happen to be the people, the type of people who like to do this right here when you're talking to them, they give you that look or what have you. That look is designed to scare you. You have to push past that look. You have to say, you're not scaring me with that look. At the end of the day, this is the truth, and you know it's the truth. This is what you need to do. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. Is I'm going to have to push past offense. And the thing I said when like I said, when the Lord gave me this topic, one of the things I was like, well, one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to have the religiously bound people who come in. You're going to have the people to come in who they like to deal with, like they don't come on my post normally. They're going to come on just because of the topic, because they are educated in regards to Black History Matters or something like that, and they happen to have a lot of bitterness towards, maybe white America, and they got a lot of anger issues, but they happen to have an education on African American matters, and so I'm fully aware that they're coming. I'm fully aware that they're coming, so I'm not going to answer anything like that. So one of the things I wanted to ask you ladies, and I'm going to give you guys a chance. I'm going to wait for 3 answers before we start the broadcast. I want to ask you ladies this. Do you want to have a hard conversation, or do you want me to just go ahead and open up a question and answers and avoid the hard conversation? Let me see how many of you are ready for a hard conversation. Are you ready to have a hard conversation? Or do you want to just do question and answers? I'm going to wait for 3 answers in the chat, and once I get those 3 answers, we'll push forward. Once I get those 3 answers, we'll push forward. Let me know, you guys, if you want to have a hard conversation, or do you want to go ahead and just do question and answers. Waiting on you guys' response. Hard convo, amen. We got one. Waiting on 2 more people. Don't be scared. Because one of the things we're going to have to do in the African American race, okay, 2, thank you. Okay, we got 3. Hard conversation it is. One of the things we're going to have to do in the African American race is that we're going to have to get past the offense that happens to be in a lot of people in our race. Not every person, but we have to push past that, because we've come to the point where we're intimidated by our parents, we're intimidated by our aunties, we're intimidated by so many people, because we're so used to this look. We're so used to that. We're so used to people just basically, letting us know, hey, you can't do that, or you can't say that. And so we've had to watch people perish that could have lived or would have lived if we had a hard conversation with them. People who could have did something good with their life had we had a hard conversation with them. And so for me, the people in my life who are the closest to me, I give them full rights, full permission to have a hard conversation with me. And the reason for that is because I want to move forward and I want to grow. I want to grow in the things of God. I want to grow as a human being. I don't want to be stuck in my comfort zone. And so in order to come out of a comfort zone, we have to have a hard conversation. So I'm really pleased with you guys. So we're going to go straight into it. Today's topic is breaking the curse of slavery. Breaking the curse of slavery. And I'm going to tell you guys something. And so I want you to hear this disclaimer. I want you to bear with me on this, because I may say some things that may be a little bit offensive. But if you listen to me, or you listen to this message in its entirety, I will redeem myself. If you listen to this message in its entirety, you'll shake your head. And so the thing that I want you to understand is that I'm coming from a place where, listen, I grew up poor. We moved around most of my childhood. When we were growing up, my parents would move like every year because we were poor. We didn't own any property. We lived in Mississippi, which is one of the poorest states in the United States of America. And of course, we know that Mississippi is known for its racism and its racial ignorance, or what have you. And so I lived in what we call black communities. I lived in ghettos growing up. And so for the most part, most of my childhood was spent moving around. Most of my childhood, I had my parents, but most of my childhood was spent moving around. I remember, I can remember all the way back to 1st grade. We lived on a street called Solomon Street. Second grade, we stayed on the street. Trying to remember the name of that street. I just remember it starts with an E. 3rd grade, we lived on Syphilus Street. 4th grade, trying to see where we lived. So basically almost every year we moved. Because we could barely afford the rent. And so we were on public assistance or what have you, which is true for a lot of us, not just African Americans, but Caucasian Americans, Latino Americans, or what have you. A lot of us have dealt with public assistance or what have you. And so one of the blessings that I can say that I had was I had a workaholic mother. And so the reason we were on public assistance wasn't so much because of my mother. It was more so because of my dad, because my dad wouldn't work as much. So my mom would always have 2 jobs, and that just didn't cut it. She would always have these 2. I remember she worked at a place called Matt Gray's for like 16 years. She was there faithfully every day. And then she would have a side job where she would work at restaurants as a cook, washing dishes and stuff like that. She was just, working hard to make ends meet, even though she was a married woman. And so that's going to speak to a lot of you who are chasing marriage. You better wait and let God bring the one, because my mom worked like she was a single woman. She did she was just always working as a child. I just remember her, being gone a whole lot of the time. And even nowadays when she apologized, my mom was not one to apologize, and most of you who are from the South, you understand the pride that was in the parents in the South. A lot of African American parents were really, really prideful in the South, and so it has become the butt of jokes these days, but we understand it. But so the one thing my mom does, she does apologize. She always says, the one regret I have is that I work so much because I feel like I didn't spend enough time with you guys. And so she uses that to say basically, the bad choices you guys made, and being screwed up and all this other stuff as children or as teenagers and as young adults had everything to do with me not being around or being present as a parent. Yeah, it's a really poor state. But, you know, she sees it that way. But that was part of it. But a large part of it was because of oppressive mindsets. When you're dealing with the South, there's a lot of oppressive mindsets, especially amongst African Americans. And I found that one of the biggest things is fear. One of the biggest issues with African Americans is fear. If you've been oppressed for a long time, you will deal with the spirit of fear. And here's my take on the spirit of fear. This is what I've learned about fear. Fear actually chases you. It chases you into debt. It chases you into relationships. It chases you all over the place. You're always running. And so you have to turn around and repent. And you have to begin to confront fear. You have to go and face your fears. You have to confront it head on, stand in its face and say, do what you said you're going to do if you got the power to do it. And you'll find that fear is not as powerful as it says it is, but it will chase you all over the place. You'll have bill collectors calling you and threatening you and all this other stuff, and you get afraid. And so what you do is you run and put yourself in even more debt. And so what you're doing is running from your bill collectors. You put yourself in even more debt, and you get a little bit of relief. And the next thing you know, now the debt collectors there are chasing you, and you have to go and constantly keep putting yourself in debt. And so that wall is constantly thickening. You're just constantly going deeper and deeper and deeper. And so that's the reality of when you're dealing with, you know, I'm not just going to say the South, but the poor mind sort of when you're dealing with the spirit of fear. Okay, so this again, guys, my disclaimer for those of you who are just coming on, I'm going to say some things that may be a little bit offensive. I just really want you to bear with me and just listen to this message in its entirety or what have you. What provoked the message earlier today, I really didn't have much of anything to talk about. You know, I was thinking to myself, well, I have a lot of things that I can talk about, but I didn't have anything that I wanted to talk about. And so earlier today, I pretty much said in my heart, I said, you know what, I think I'll just come on YouTube and I'll probably just do a question and answer segment. You know, that was my thing. I said, I'll just do a question and answer segment because I really don't feel like writing up any notes. I had to go to Walmart to take back a blender. And when I went, you know, the blender, I bought it a couple of days ago, and I tried to blend some fruit with it, and it blended the first time, but the second time I tried to use it, it wasn't working, which was probably my fault because I only put the plastic part in the refrigerator, so I can't say that was my fault. The next day when I tried to use it again, it wasn't really blending. And so I took it back and I was like, okay, I'll just go get a different one. Either way, the blender that I got was really noisy. When I cut it on, it sounded like people were getting killed. And so I was like, I'm going to go and get one of those other ones that said they're a little bit quieter. I ended up settling on a NutriBullet, which is something I've had. This is my third time having a NutriBullet. And my experience with the NutriBullet is that it dies after a year or what have you. But they were on sale for 49 bucks. And normally they used to be 99 bucks. So I decided to go ahead and get a NutriBullet. Okay, so with that being said, while I was standing in line, the line was long. And there's no reason that line should have been long. At first they had 2 people up there, and then they had 3. Now there was this lady, and she had her daughter with her, and they were standing up there. And y'all, I didn't even know you can bring food back to Walmart. I mean, I would never think to do anything like that, but I didn't know you can bring food back. Now I understand if you buy something that's expired. I did that at Sam's Club recently. I bought some food from them. I bought some burritos from them. And I decided I wanted to try frozen because I've never eaten frozen burritos. And I decided, well, let me see if they're good or what have you. And I bought them. And I got those frozen burritos home and I put them in my freezer. And I did like I always do. Probably a week or two, I'm not really thinking about it. But one particular day I decided to go check out those frozen burritos. Found out they had expired in December of 2017. I was like, oh, the devil is a lie. They getting these things back. And so I did take those back. But this particular lady, she was holding up one of the lines, and she had been there for like 20 or 30 minutes, according to the lady that was in front of me. But she was holding up the line, and she was bringing back a grocery basket full of groceries. And I didn't even know you could do that. She was bringing back, I saw she had chicken in there. She had green peppers, things that are we call perishables, what have you. She had all those things in there, and she was having it put back onto her food stamp card. And so she was sitting there, and I'm thinking to myself, why are you bringing food back? I just couldn't. But then the thing that started to get me was I was like, okay, She's holding up the line and she's being really nasty with the cashiers or what have you. And they're trying their best. They were, ringing it up, but for whatever reason, they couldn't credit it back to her food stamp card. And I started immediately thinking about slavery. And one of the things that has to be broken with us, what have you, if you happen to be Caucasian, or if you, whatever race you are, I want you to listen to this message in its entirety. I don't care what, because we're not just talking about African American slavery. We're going to do a little bit talking about the transatlantic slavery, but I really want to delve into slavery as a whole. And so, long story short, I'm standing there and I'm getting frustrated because I've been in line for like 20 something minutes, and according to them, she had already been up there before I came, like 20 something minutes, and she was just raising hell. And so they were just trying to say to her, like, ma'am, we can't credit it back for whatever reason. So they're trying to explain and they're trying to do whatever. And she was like, I done been in this line. And so she's going off. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, first and foremost, why are you bringing food back? Secondly, when I heard her talk, just the words that she was using and stuff like that, I realized that she was, what we would say, oppressed. You could tell that, I don't want to say from the ghetto, because there are a lot of educated people in the ghetto. There's white ghettos and black ghettos. Let's be real about it. But I can tell that she was oppressed, like she was from the ghetto of ghettos. I can tell that she, just had an oppressed mindset or what have you. And so her way of dealing with everything was through offense. And it just got me to thinking about slavery and what it has done to us as African Americans, even to our mindsets. It got me to thinking about, because a lot of times when I was living in Mississippi, I had to see different things that were manifesting in the South. When you're in the poorest state of them all, you see a lot of different things that are manifesting, even within your own race, to the point where you're just like, okay, this is not who we are as a black people. This is not a trend, or this isn't, or not so much a trend. This isn't a character trait of ours. This is something that we picked up. And so with that being said, I want to jump straight on into the message, guys. So today what I want to deal with is some mindset. So is to help us to get free. Is to help us to push past some stuff. And so again, I want you to listen to this thing in its entirety. I don't want you guys to be walking around with the spirit of offense. If you find yourself getting offended, understand that that's a spirit that's been trying to hold you in bondage. And so today is time to push past that thing. And so let's go ahead and move into it. When we think about slavery, we think about the transatlantic slave trade, which occurred between the 15th and the 19th centuries. During this time, over 10 million Africans were enslaved and transported to either Europe or America. Somewhere between 12 million to 14 million had been captured, but many died in Africa before they arrived at the ship, because they would chain them together and they would have to travel to the port. So many of them, the harsh conditions of trying to travel to the ship, many of them died before getting on the ship. Nevertheless, slavery, and then others died on the ship. A lot of them died on the ship, and we understand what happened was that when they had slaves that would die on the ship, because they didn't want to take the dead ones over to America, and because they didn't want disease to spread, they would throw them off into the water. And a lot of times they even threw off people who were still living but was sickly or deathly ill or what have you. They would throw them off into the water and just let them drown. And we know that was very, very wicked, but it happened. And so nevertheless, slavery had long been in effect before the transatlantic slave trade. We're going to talk about this today. For example, all throughout the Bible, we see that the Israelites being taken into captivity many times, with one of the most famous accounts being their 430-year stint in Egypt, which is detailed in the book of Exodus. And so we see that slavery is nothing new. We just got caught up. A lot of our ancestors got caught up and thrown into slavery, but it is nothing new. It's still wicked. It's still something that's ugly, but the reality is it's been around for a long time. There are many little known or largely known facts about American slavery that often go ignored, and these are the truths. If these truths step on your feet, guys, you got to push past it. You got to push past it. Number one, slavery was already common in part. Slavery was already a common practice in Africa, and many of the slaves taken by Europeans were purchased from African slave owners. They were purchased from African slave owners. I want to stop here right quick and say that slavery is still prevalent even in Africa. It's prevalent in places like Haiti. It's prevalent all over the world. And so it's not just a white thing. You see it in all races. But in the African American race, you do see in Africa that they are holding people. We saw that probably about a year or two ago. I think that was Libya, where it was really big, or was it Libya or Liberia? But it was really big. They were finding out that there was a slave trade or what have you. I think CNN went over there and tried to report on it, but they found out that it is still something that happens. And so I want to talk to you guys and say this before we move on to the next point, the next 2 points. I've had experience in seeing this. Now, I saw a news thing about and I forgot what you call people in Haiti. In Haiti, people will make slaves out of their family members. And so basically, if you happen to be really poor, and I'm talking about modern day, I'm not talking about, just from the long time, but let me see. Let me go ahead and start blocking. Give me a second, guys. Give me a second. Okay. All right, so moving on. So with that being said, I forgot what you called them in Haiti. If any of you remember the term that they use, but in Haiti, they okay, it was in Libya, thanks. But in Haiti, they have a term for like a family member of yours. Let's just say that you are a mother and you can't afford to take care of your children. The father's not around, or the father, passed away or something like that. You can easily give your child to one of the family members, who will then turn that child into a slave. The child will basically work for the family member in exchange for having a place to stay and food to eat. So slavery is not something that's uncommon in the African American race, or the African race. And I want to say this. From my own experience, I was married. You guys know I was married to a guy from Cameroon. And I got a chance to see something. I've been to, I think, I used to say 14 countries, but I think it's 11 countries. I thought Amsterdam, and I don't even know where I got all that. But long story short, I've been to 11 countries. And so I remember going to Italy with my ex one time. And we stayed a week in Italy. And while in Italy, we stayed at a friend of his house. And while we were at the friend's house, the friend had a sister who was living with him, who he had turned into a slave. And I just remember being so infuriated, because I was like, wait a minute, he got this girl being a slave for him. That was his own sister. And so my ex, he confirmed it. He was like, because he didn't like it, he was like, he done basically made his sister into an unofficial slave. And so basically what had happened with them was that her parents had gotten the money together to send her over to Italy for her to go to school, which is something that's really common in Africa. A lot of times, parents will try to go out of their way. They'll try to find money in a family or what have you to send one of the children over to Europe or to America to go to school so they can have a better life. And so they had sent her over to Europe to live with her brother. Well, instead of pushing her to go to school or doing anything like that, the brother, what he ended up doing was, he had a wife, and him and his wife had a child, but he had the girl cleaning his house. And so I didn't catch on for like the first day. I just thought it was African culture, because I've seen that with African women, if you come, or in Cameroonian culture, a lot of African cultures, when you come to an African woman's house, the culture is, when you come over there, the woman has to get up and she goes into the kitchen to prepare a meal, because they're all about hospitality. So she goes straight into the kitchen to prepare a meal. The men come in, they sit down, and they'll start drinking a lot of times. And so the women, even if I'm coming to visit, I have to leave the guys in the living room and go into the kitchen and help the woman out. Of course, I wasn't going for it. I had an attitude. I was like, man, what is this stuff here? And so long story short, I remember getting to Italy, and by this time I was a little bit acclimated to the culture. I knew what was expected or what have you. But at the same time, in American culture, women, we will go into the kitchen and help one another. And so I started noticing, I think day 1 or day 2, I thought it was just the culture kicking in. By day 3, I was like, wait, this girl is literally trying to come up behind us and clean up everything. And so we would be eating, and I noticed that, okay, he would have us come into his living room for all of us to sit around and eat. And we would be eating, and once we finished, he would call her. She would come get his plate. I mean, she would just keep her head down. She wouldn't say much of anything. She would come get his plate. His wife did the same thing. She would call her. She would call her name, or she'd just be sitting there. She'll come get the plate or what have you. And so when she came for my plate, I was like, no, ma'am, I got it. I told her I'll clean it. And she was like, no. And so she didn't speak English. But she understood because I'm pulling my plate. I was like, no, I got it. So my ex was telling her what I was saying. And she was like, no. You know, she lifted her head and she looked at me. And she was like, no, 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 you know. And I was like, no, I'm going to wash this. I got this. And so what I would do is, a lot of times, I remember that particular day, she insisted. She got my plate away from me, and she went into the kitchen and she started washing the dishes. So I'm in there feeling guilty. I'm feeling some type of way because, you know, I'm sitting up in there and the wife is sitting there and she's laid out, you know, rubbing her stomach. Everybody else laid out, but this girl in the kitchen busting suds. And so I get up and I was like, excuse me. So I go into the kitchen and I said, I'm going to help. And she's like, no, no, no. And she walks back into the living room and she tries to tell my ex. And so my ex, he comes to me and he says, Tiff, he said, you're right. He said he's made a slave out of his sister. He was supposed to send her to school, but he didn't brought her over here, and I think whatever money he must have had, but he made a slave out of her. He wasn't planning to send her to school. He didn't want her dealing with people. He didn't want her having any friends. He literally made a slave out of his sister. And so slavery is something that we don't necessarily talk about, but guys, listen, it's prevalent today. It is something that we don't discuss, but it's something that still happens today. Sometimes in some countries it's legal, and in some communities or some villages it may be legal, but then you still see it that's acting out with some individuals. They'll bring people in and they won't necessarily call it slavery, but in this case, I saw this girl, she was made into a slave. And so the whole week that I was there, I was like, listen, I went into that kitchen and I was helping her out. I'm just like, no, you know, I don't want you to be constantly washing my dishes. And I would even say something to my ex. I was like, ask him why he can't wash his own plate. You know, I'm just sitting there. My little American attitude started kicking in. So the point is that slavery is something that's still common. It's something that still happens today. And so number one, was slavery was already a common practice in Africa. Many of the slaves taken by Europeans were purchased from African slave owners. Number two, most slaves who were enslaved by African slave owners were enslaved because they either owed petty debts or they committed minor criminal or religious offenses. So they had a lot of religious wars back in those times. And so if you had a prevailing religion and you came with some different beliefs, it's kind of like in Afghanistan and countries like that to this day, where they are largely Muslim. And so if you come over there, I said Mormon, but they're largely Muslim. And so if you go over there, or if any person rises up and starts to go against it, then a lot of times they'll throw that person in prison, and if they're convicted, they may even stone them to death. And so that is what was happening back during that time, is that, you know, you can have a prevalent religion in a place or what have you. If somebody raised up and went against that religion, they can end up bound. And if they end up bound, what ends up happening is you had these European slave owners, or these European straight slave trade stations. They would set up these stations in Africa, and people can come and sell off their slaves to them or what have you. They can sell off family members. They can sell off people that, you know, just different people. They can sell them off. And so number three, in America, there were some black slave owners. In America, during that time, there were some black slave owners, including a man, and you guys look up these guys, named Anthony Johnson, and a man named William Ellerson. He's also listed as William Ellison, but his name is listed, I think, on his slave documents or what have you, as William Ellerson, Ellerson. Both of whom were wealthy black men. And so the point is that, you know, in the black American slave trade, we did still have some fault in that as well. This is something that we don't necessarily talk about. It makes me think of our relationships. A lot of times, not just African Americans, but people as a whole, especially Americans, Westerners, we get into relationships and we focus on what ended the relationship and not necessarily what started or ignited the relationship. I remember the Lord telling me, you're responsible for your divorce. And I was like, how? He said, because you married the man. You know, he took me all the way back. One thing I love about God is he'll take you all the way back to the beginning of a thing, and that's where you get your healing and your deliverance and everything else. And so basically what he was trying to get me to understand is that you can't blame the men. You can't sit there and talk about what they did. Yes, they ended the relationship. They did something that was so you know, traumatic, or something so bad that it ended the relationship, but you were still at fault as well. And so you have to assume some responsibility in it if you want to be free of this man. If you want to be free of those relationships, you have to assume some responsibility in it. And I was just like everybody else. You know, there was a point where I was like, okay, I don't see where I did wrong. I saw my intentions. I saw my behavior. I saw the things that I had done in the relationship to make the relationship work. But I didn't focus on the fact that I fornicated. I didn't focus on the fact that, you know, I went outside the will of God. I got with somebody that I was unequally yoked with. I didn't focus on the fact that I wasn't accountable with any of my relationships, that I did everything my way. I wasn't focused on that. I was focused on the fact that, okay, you cheated, you did this, you did that, you had this problem, you had that problem. I was so focused on the man's issues. And one of the things I came to learn about God is that he won't move you forward until you move forward. So let's go ahead and move on. So with that being said, we all know that slavery was bad. It was wicked. It was a wicked act, and it cost many their lives and their sanity. But the question is, are we still suffering from the effects of slavery at this very moment? I want you guys to answer that in the comments right now. For those of you who will answer, I want you to answer this. Do you think we're still suffering from the effects of slavery? Do you still think that we're suffering from the effects of slavery? And I'll answer you guys real quick. And I want y'all to be bold, because one of the things we're going to do as a people is we're going to start pushing past the fence. We're going to start pushing past being afraid of saying something, because we don't want folks to come and attack us or, you know, say, well, this is that or what have you. But do you still think that we're suffering from the effects? I haven't seen an answer yet. And I'm assuming that it's because a lot of times, again, we happen to be really fearful. We happen to be really fearful. Amen. Amen. We got to get the, amen. Amen. We got to get the people in. And so sometimes, just to say, sometimes for those of you who are leaders, sometimes people wait for the leader to respond. And one of the things that you'll notice is that a lot of times people are so used to taking a back seat. And so this is something I want to deal with. I want to deal with these mindsets today, is that some people, I can post up something on Facebook, and there are some people who will never respond until somebody else responds, because they are followers. So you catch on to that after a while. There are some people, they always have to be number 3 or number 4, but they're wondering, is that offensive what she said? I like it, but I don't want to like it because I don't want to, you know, publicly like it, because I don't want people to come against me. And so I'm going to sit back and wait. And then they wait till you get like 10 or 15 likes. Then they come along and they like it. And some people wait till you get like 50 to 100 likes, and then they come along and they like it. And so one of the things I'm going to be dealing with, I want to deal with, is that I want to deal with that following mindset, because that's what's holding so many of us into captivity. I want to deal with that. I want you to be able to speak boldly and say, hey, listen, this is what happens. And so you have to deal with the repercussions sometimes of offense. And so that's how you push forward, and that's how you actually lead people out of slavery. So let's go ahead and move on. Of course, the answer is a resounding yes. We are still dealing with the repercussions of slavery. We still see that manifesting. And so first and foremost, slavery ended in 1865. We are in the year 2018, which means that slavery ended 165 years ago. Did I do that right? Hold up, guys. I think I did wrong. I don't know what I did. Hold up. Because that math ain't right. I'm looking at that again, and I'm just like, hold up. That's not right. Give me a second. All right. Okay. So, I think it's 163 years ago. I'm steady closing this thing out. What is going on with me? All right, let's go here. Okay, 153 years ago. 153 years ago. I don't feel like doing any math right now. 153 years ago. Nevertheless, after slavery, many southern states went out of their way to oppress African Americans. The following information was taken from www.theconversation.com, topic, exploiting black labor after the abolition of slavery. And so this is talking about something that was happening in the 1900s. Slavery just ended in late 1865. And so they're talking about something that was happening in the 1900s. Many of us were born in the 1900s. Myself, I was born in 1977. Okay, so this again was taken from theconversation.com. The topic is exploiting black labor after the abolition of slavery. With the help of profiteering industrialists, they found yet a new way to build wealth on the bound labor of black Americans. The convict lease system. Here's how it worked. Black men, and sometimes women and children, were arrested and convicted for crimes enumerated in the black codes. State laws criminalizing petty offenses and aimed at keeping free people tied to their former owners' plantations, and farms. This is really how demons work. They'll go out of their way to hold on to you. The most sinister crime was vagrancy, the crime of being unemployed, which brought a large fine that few blacks could afford to pay. Black convicts were leased to private companies, typically industries profiteering from the region's untapped natural resources. As many as 200,000 black Americans were forced into back-breaking labor in coal mines, turpentine factories, and lumber camps. They lived in squalid conditions, chained, starved, beaten, flogged, and sexually violated. They died by the thousands from injury, disease, and torture. And this was happening in the 1900s. And so we wonder why we see so many things that in the African American race, and so many times, people like to write off the African American race as ignorant, or write off the African American race in a lot of negative ways because of what's manifesting. But the reality is, all races are good. There are some bad in every race. God created us all. But the reality is there is creativity, a lot of creativity in the African American race. The enemy really went out of his way to bind African Americans, or to bind Africans. He really went out of his way. And so if you've been dealing with that in the 1900s, it's no wonder we're still seeing this stuff in our blood. It's no wonder I'm standing in a store, standing in a line, and I'm seeing this woman just really, and I hate to say it this way, but it's the reality. It's something that we all think, but we don't say out loud. I felt embarrassed, not to be a black, but I felt embarrassed. I was like, I don't want people to think that this is how black people act, because this does not represent the entirety of the black race. But of course, my heart opened up to compassion, because I realized that she was likely raised in the mindset, and so it's not necessarily her fault from the time she was a child, but it is her fault now because she stayed there. It is her fault now because she stayed there. And so we're going to go ahead and move on, because I really want to talk to you guys. This type of oppressive behavior, and we're talking about, the oppression and what they were doing to blacks back then. But this type of oppressive behavior continues to follow us even some 100 years later. It is no doubt that racism still exists in America, not just whites hating blacks, but there are blacks who hate whites and there are blacks who hate blacks. Can we talk about that? There are blacks who hate whites and there are blacks who hate blacks. For this reason, our country is severely divided along racial and economic lines. Despite where we stand, we all know that racial inequality exists in many regions, whether we want to admit this or not. But how does this affect us today? Let's review Numbers 14:26 through 35, which reads, "And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying," and now first and foremost, what's happening, just to give you a backdrop, what's happening is they have, the Israelites have been in slavery for over 400 years to the Egyptians. And so they finally got free. God has set them free from slavery. But here they're still slaves. Here in their mind, they're still slaves. And so they're giving Moses a hard time. See, the thing is, it has to break off of here. They're giving Moses a hard time because he got them out of there, but still they're complaining because they're so accustomed to the way things went. See, the thing about it is you get so adapted to a system. I know that I'm going to eat. I know I got a place to sleep. It may not be the best place. It may not be this. And so you will forsake God's will for you in order to go back to your comfort zone. And so that's the backdrop. Let's review again Numbers 14:26 through 35. It reads, "And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, How long shall this wicked congregation grumble against me? I have heard the grumblings of the people of Israel, which they grumble against me. Say to them, As I live, declares the Lord, what you have said in my hearing I will do to you. Your dead bodies shall fall in this wilderness, and of all your number listed in the census from 20 years old and upward who have grumbled against me, not one shall come into the land where I swore that I would make you dwell, except Caleb the son of Jephunneh and Joshua the son of Nun. But your little ones, who you said will become a prey, I will bring in, and they shall know the land that you have rejected. But as for you, your dead bodies shall fall in the wilderness, and your children shall be as shepherds in the wilderness 40 years, and shall suffer for your faithlessness until the last of your dead body lies in the wilderness, according to the number of days in which You spied out the land 40 days, a year for each day. You shall bear your iniquity 40 years, and you shall know my displeasure. I, the Lord, have spoken. Surely this will I do to all this wicked congregation who are gathered together against me. In the wilderness they shall come to a full end, and there they shall die. And so what we see here is what's called a generational curse. What we see here is God saying that everybody who's 20 years old and older was going to die in the wilderness. That is a generational curse. And okay, the children paid for their parents' iniquity because God did not want them to carry that sin into the land. God didn't want them bringing that sin into the land. So I want you to relate that to where you are right now, things that you've been praying for with God. There is a promised land. There is a promise that he has in front of you, but there are some things, some mindsets that he's not going to allow you to bring into that land. Yes, the prophet may have spoken. The prophet may have said that God's going to give you a house. God has this big house for you. He has this big car for you, but he's got he's got this husband. I see your husband and he's like this. I see all of these things. However, as you can see, God promised them to go into a promised land, but many of them never got a chance to see it. He brought their seed into the promised land because of their mindset. The thing about it is, it's so easy as a Christian to become entitled, and it's so easy as a Christian to be so used to being in bondage that you think that everything is supposed to go an old way. And so you want God to come into your system. You want God to come into your comfort zone and bless you, and God is calling you out of your comfort zone. And so that's what we see a lot of times when in slavery. And so a lot of them had to die. He wanted the mindset to die off of them before he took them into the promised land. But because the people were so stubborn, he had to allow many of them to die off. Sadly enough, guys, right now I see that with people a lot of times. It's a mindset that when you get older, people don't want to let go of. For me, like I said, growing up in the South, I got a chance to see a lot of African American, even parents, they will be so stubborn. They would be so stubborn. It's not just African American, because my mom, she worked at a nursing home for several years, and she worked also in-house taking care of, she worked as a CNN for several years. And so we got a chance to see, my mom would come back, and sometimes she would have to care for elderly white people, and she would talk about how stubborn they were. It's the same thing with African Americans. Sometimes we become so stubborn. And one of the things about stubbornness is that it has you in this, it'll chase you. It's nothing but fear. It'll have you locked into a mindset for so long that God can't bless you, and God is calling you out. And you going to church, you pray and you prophesy and you speaking in tongues and you falling out and you doing all that other stuff. But you're telling God, come bless me right here. Come bless me in my bondage. Come bless me in my mindset. Come bless me right here. And then God is saying, no, you have to come out. And sadly enough, a lot of people, not just African Americans, remember, this is not a black thing. This is not a black message. This is a message speaking to the body of Christ. But a lot of times people get so caught up in a mindset that God can't bless them. They get so caught up in fornication. They get so caught up in sin and not wanting to come out of it because that's your comfort zone. In fornication, I know that I can lock the man down. In fornication, I know that we can live together. We can shack. We can do all this other stuff. And so they get so caught up in that. And God is saying, I love you. I'm calling you out. I know I got to take you through some uncomfortable places. I got to take you through a wilderness season where ain't nobody calling you. Ain't no man checking for you. And all of a sudden, when I go into the mall, I used to get all the attention and no man is looking at me. My little sister, I was talking to her on the phone the other day, and she's just 6 years younger than me. So I'm 41, so she's 35. And so one of the things she said was that we were joking about, that transition. And she was talking about, how right now she's in that transitional phase where it still bothers her when guys aren't checking for her. She was like, man, what happened? She's like, I go to the mall, nobody's looking at me or what have you. We go through that transitional phase, but you get so accustomed to thinking a certain way. You get so accustomed to things or what have you. And so you want God to come bless you in your sin. You get so accustomed, and God is calling you out. He's saying, I want you to be an example. Before I sit here and send a husband to you, before I give you the blessed book, before I give you the blessed career or the your own company, before I give you all these things, you got to understand that whatever is wrong with you comes on a platform with you. So if I bless you and I give you $1 million and you're still in fornication, then you're going to promote fornication. Even if you don't do it with your mouth, you're going to still promote fornication. And so when you get onto this platform and God starts blessing you, People say, well, I don't have to change my ways for God to bless me. So all I have to do is stay like I am. I'm just going to give up. Because like she said, I got to give up a couple of these friends or what have you. I'm just going to stop doing a few of those things, and then God's going to bless me. And so God is saying, no, I need you to come out the mindset. See, what God was trying to do, he got the people to come out of Egypt, but he couldn't get Egypt out of them. He got the people to come out of Egypt, but they wouldn't let Egypt out of them. And so it makes me think and I hate to say it, but it makes me think of a neighbor that I had at one point. I'm living in a nice, quiet neighborhood, and I'm just blessing God for it and what have you. All my neighbors are either black or white, and they're working class. Everybody is good, but then we get this one neighbor to move in, and her mindset is she's so accustomed to living in regions where she could be disrespectful. She's so accustomed to parking in front of folks' stuff, just putting your trash in other folks' trash cans and doing stuff like that. And it made me so upset because I was like, what is with this mindset? And so what ends up happening, and you guys have heard me say this before, is that everybody starts to move because it's not about being black, it's not about being white. But people start moving when they see that mindset because they're just like, okay, you're being disrespectful, and the only thing that I can do is either I have to argue and fight with you or be quiet while you're being disrespectful. And so people are so used to living in peace. Your house is your sanctuary. You're so used to living in peace. You don't want to have contention with your neighbors. You're used to getting along with all your neighbors. Hey, how y'all doing? We don't necessarily have to be on speaking terms, but you're used to getting along with all of your neighbors. And so now it's either I accept your disrespect or I sit back and I say, hey, don't park in front of my stuff. Don't do this and don't do that. And it makes you frustrated to have to be the one to come out and say, don't do that. Excuse me, ma'am. Could you not do that? Could you not do that? But it's a mindset. And so, again, a lot of times what happens in a community, if you move into a community and you have that disrespectful mindset, that mindset where, you know what, I'm going to come in and I'm going to take over and y'all just going to have to roll with me or what have you. If you come in, then people just start moving. They don't want to fight. So people start putting their houses up for sale. And so one of my neighbors, he actually stopped me, talked to me. He said, Tiffany, I got to sell my house. He said, I got to sell my house. And this is a black man. He was like, I got to sell my house. He said, because, she pulled in and he said, it's like the way that they do. I caught them putting trash in other people's trash can. He said, Tiffany, me and him had a conversation about what needs to be done in our race. And he was like, he said, Tiffany, I love African Americans. He said, but I can't stand niggas. And that was his term. He said, I can't stand niggas. And so we understand what he meant by that. We're talking about a enslaved mindset. And so what happens is people begin to move out. And so you just start moving out, and so other people that has that like mindset as her begin to move in, and slowly that community becomes a community of disrespect and dishonor. Wherever you see dishonor, you will see the Jezebel spirit. Wherever you see dishonor, you will see poverty, you will see mammon, you will see different things that begin to raise up. If you ever take the time to pay attention, if you want to see the difference between a good community versus a bad community where there is crime, the difference between the two is dishonor. That's the difference between the two. In a nice, quiet community, every neighbor respects each other. As a matter of fact, they have a neighborhood watch. So basically, they want to come together in unity, and they want to have a meeting every month and what have you, and they want to talk about what's going to be accepted and what's not going to be accepted in their community. And so everybody goes out of their way to be nice. And so if a new neighbor moves in, a lot of times they'll come and they'll bring in apple pie. They'll bring some type of gift with them or what have you. But when you go to a bad community, it's a different vibe. It's more so, hey, listen, I'm going to test you. I'm going to do what I want to do until you say something. You say something and we have to become enemies and what have you. And that's the reality that we have to deal with. A lot of times we don't like to talk about this because a lot of us have come out of ghettos. But what we got to do is we got to let the ghetto come out of us. We have to grow out. We have to allow that stuff to come out of our thinking. We have to allow that stuff to come out of our heart. We got to allow the oppression of slavery and all this other stuff that our grandparents, our great-grandparents went through. We have to allow that stuff to begin to come out of our systems. And so what we see is God dealing with the children of Israel, and they're dealing now with a generational curse. And so everybody who's 20 years old and older is going to die in the wilderness except for Caleb and Joshua. Those are the only two people who's not going to die in the wilderness. And so sadly enough, many of us We're watching that as well. Some of us are getting up and we're going to school and we're trying to pull our parents out of mindsets and trying to pull our grandparents out of mindsets, but they're still so stuck back there. And so you're trying to tell them, you know what? It's not a race thing. You know, in America or in the South, you'll still hear some African American parents say, you know, don't white people or what have you. And you're just like, no, it's not a race thing. There are some good whites and there are some bad whites. There are some good blacks and there are some bad blacks. It's not a race thing. This is just the reality of the day. And so let's go ahead and move on. And so again, what we see here is a generational curse. The children paid for their parents' iniquity because God did not want them to carry that sin into the promised land, into the land that he promised them. He wanted that mindset to die off. But because the people were so stubborn, he had to allow them to die off. How many of us are so stubborn that we can't get to the blessing that God has for us? How many of us are so stubborn? And you know, here's the thing. We think that God has to bless us in a mindset. Because do you know what I went through, God? I had to suffer through all this, and you let all these people do all this stuff to me. So yes, I'm Christian, but you got to come bless me in this mindset. And you sit there trying to bully the living God, and you sit there and you wait and you wait and you wait. 50 years old, 60 years old, and you done been around a mountain I don't know how many times, and so your beauty begins to fade, your health begins to fade, everything begins to fade, but you're still in bondage right here, not realizing you're constantly going around a mountain. At some point you got to break that system. Going around a mountain is a representation of the system. At some point you got to break that system. At some point you got to say, this is not working. You got to stop allowing the devil to convince you to go back around the mountain one more time. So let's go ahead and get into the lesson. I know we think that we're teaching now, but let's go ahead and get into the lesson. Of course, we do not ascribe to any of the black Hebrew Israelites teaching. For those of you who may be coming in late, we do know that's a false doctrine. I'm not scared to say that. And so that's not what this is about. This isn't a racial message. This isn't a message to talk about, oh, black man, to give you something to blame somebody else. This is a message to come all the way out. That's what this message is about. So what we're dealing with today is a mindset. The mindsets that came out of slavery. Again, slavery was 153 years ago. We're dealing with the mindsets that came out of slavery, mindsets that are very much alive and flourishing today. These are mindsets that are so prevalent today. Number one, I want to give you guys a few pointers, a few facts. Number one, in 2016, federal and state prisons held roughly around 486,900 blacks in captivity and 439,800 whites in captivity. These numbers are alarming considering the fact that only 12.5% of the U.S. population is black. Only 12.5% of the U.S. population is black. Number two, the following information was taken from www.census.gov. It reads the black population at 41.6% were more likely to participate in government assistance programs in an average month. This study is from the year 2012. And so before somebody argues with me, oh, more whites are on public assistance, you pretty much know that that's not what this is about. But it was saying 41% of blacks. And so if you look at the black race, nearly 50% of blacks are on public assistance. We have to deal with that. We got to talk about it. How do we get past that? If we don't talk about it, if we keep pointing the fingers of blame and then we stay oppressed. We keep staying to the point where we have to depend on somebody. And I want to call it what it is. When you have to depend on other people to take care of you, that's still slavery. When you have to depend on the tax dollars of anybody else, that's still slavery. Let me explain it to you this way. When you're dealing with public assistance, you're being basically told how much money you're going to get in every month, where you can stay, because you can't stay in a nice neighborhood. You can't afford to stay in a nice neighborhood. You have to stay where there are programs that will allow you, for example, if you happen to be on HUD assistance or something like that, you have to stay in certain neighborhoods. Most of the time, these are going to be bad neighborhoods. You are completely controlled. You're completely controlled, so you're still a slave. We have to talk about this type of stuff, because if we don't talk about it, we still allow the ones who want to stay bound to intimidate us, then we don't get far. And so I understand that sometimes when we're doing these type of teachings, we're not necessarily dealing with the older people, because sometimes with older people, they can be really stubborn. Not in all cases, because I'm older, but there are some older people who can be really stubborn. But a lot of times younger people have a more open heart to hear the truth, because they're like, hey, yeah, you're telling the truth. My family was bound. And so, yeah, I want to move forward. I don't want to be stuck in this mindset. I don't want to be stuck and then so what have you. And so let's go ahead and move on. Number 3, the following was taken from Wikipedia. So before somebody argues about Wikipedia, you know, Wikipedia could be false or what have you. Most of the time they do fact checks on Wikipedia. Anytime something false is published, in most cases they will remove it. And so they work hard to make sure that it's credible. And so with that being said, let me go ahead and read it. If I read this name wrong, forgive me. When Moynihan wrote in 1965 on the coming destruction of the black family, the out-of-wedlock birth rate was 25% amongst blacks. That was in 1965. In 1991, 68% of black children were born outside of marriage. In 2011, 72% of black babies were born to unmarried mothers. And we're not going to even get into the numbers for abortion. This is slavery, guys. This is slavery. The wilderness was still slavery. See, the thing was, they were only supposed to be in the wilderness 11 days. It was still slavery. And so, really, the wilderness, the purpose of the wilderness is to get you to drop off a mindset. The purpose of the wilderness season is not for you. It's not about God making you wait. Because I really want to speak to the single women. It's not about God just saying, I want her to wait. I want her to wait for her husband. I want her to wait for her financial breakthrough. I want her to wait. I want her to wait for me to deliver her family. I want her to wait because it gives me the glory. That's not how he's thinking. God is saying, drop the mindset. I got a promised land. I got a promise for you that I made a promise to your ancestors a long time ago. You had a great-great-great-grandfather who used to praise me in his chains. He used to sit there and sing praises to me. And so I promised him something a long time ago, but I can't give it to him because everybody who has come out of him has been bound. And so God is saying, I really want to bless you with the blessings that I would have given to him because the blessing is in your blood. But I need you to drop off of that mindset. I need you to stop being a victim. I need you to come to the place where you say, I'm going to be holy for God. Even if that means that nobody around me or even in my community is holy and I'm going to get talked about. But you have to drop off that mindset. Let's go ahead and move on. So what happened within our race? It starts in the mind. It starts in the mind. You see, to come out of slavery, one of the very first chains you have to loose yourself from. Notice I didn't say somebody else has to loose you from. You have to loose yourself from is the bondage of blame. That's the very first thing. You come out of relationship, whatever type of slavery that you were in. Now, relationships aren't slavery unless you are in a relationship with the wrong person. But whatever chains that you are in or whatever form of slavery that you are in, the first thing that has to happen is the bondage of blame has to drop off of you. That's the first thing that has to happen. If you don't drop the bondage of blame, you end up bound and speaking in tongues. You end up bound and falling out in church. You end up bound and God wants to do so many great things through you, but you only see a piece of the picture of what happened. And God's not going to bring you in so you can tell a lopsided story to your children because they're not going to benefit from that. God wants you to be able to talk to them, and so he wants you to tell, I was a hard-headed. You notice that older women speak like this. Most of the time when you see a woman who lives to be 80 and 90 years old, she takes a lot of accountability. I was a hard-headed girl. I just didn't do right for nobody. I ain't like nobody telling me what to do. I was fast in the pants. I was this and I was that. That's what this season is about. This season of you not getting to what it is that God has for you is about dropping off the mindset. That's what this is about. And so let's go ahead and move on. Let me go and find where I was. In blame, you'll find that you are correct when talking about what you've gone through, but there is wisdom and revelation beyond your experience. So you're right. You're right, he cheated on you. You're right, he left you. You're right that your mama wasn't the best parent in the world. Your daddy was a rolling stone. You're right about that. But there is wisdom and revelation beyond your experience. And so when you get to that wisdom and revelation, you can forgive them and move beyond it because you get something to take out. God wants you to take a good report out of your wilderness season. He don't want you to come out of your wilderness season and be telling your kids, your daddy's sorry. Your daddy wasn't there. Your daddy this and all that. But look at us now. We blessed beyond. God is not interested in you. People think that, okay, I'm going to give God the glory, but at the same time, they think I'm going to, I remember one of the terms that people used to use when I was younger is floss. I'm going to floss in my hater's face. I'm going to floss. And so you're still dealing with that mindset and God saying that got to die. Before I bless you, that got to die. You're going to have to forgive that man who left you. You're going to have to forgive him. And so you're going to have to forgive those family members. You have to call a bad mindset a bad mindset. You have to call bondage bondage. That's how you get loose from the chains. But the first chain that you have to loose yourself from is blame. To get to the heart of God, regardless of these issues, we have to put away blame. This means that we can't be focused on who sold who enslaved who beat who raped who. We keep this information for history's sake. I keep my testimony to testify, to help other people to get free. But we have to focus forward if we want to move forward. That means I can't focus on my past. I can't spend my time talking about, oh, this happened to me when I was a child, and this constantly happened, and oh gosh, I had a horrible childhood. Those are facts, but they don't get me very far. It's what did I take from those experiences. See, I can take the revelation and become a good mother with it, or I can become what I came out of. I can become what I came out of. You got to take the information and move forward. And so when I forgave and I was able to look at things from a different perspective, I was able to say, you know what? When it comes to my parents, they did the best with what they knew. They did the best with what they knew. They did. And I was able to even look back at how they were parented and say, oh, no wonder. You know, no wonder they made the choices that they made. But now I'm a different being, living a different life. I got a history. But how do I take that history? How do I take my past and turn it into a blessing? How do I take my past and pull the wisdom and the revelation out of it without taking the junk with it? You got to understand the human system digests stuff. Whatever food you eat, your system digests it. It takes the nutrients out, but it expels the crap. You have to learn to do the same thing. You got to take the nutrients out of slavery and expel the crap. But if you allow that to make you become racist, if you allow that to get you ignited every time some type of racial issue or something comes up in the media, then you're not going to go very far in life. You have to be able to take the nutrients from it. If we ever want to save this country, if you ever want to unite this country, you got to take the nutrients from it. You got to take the wisdom from it and expel the crap. Let's go ahead and move on. A lot of people will argue, well, the white man won't let me move forward. Every time I take 2 steps forward, someone is there to push me 4 steps back. Some people have truly dealt with oppression, but this is not always the case. In most of the cases, it's not the case. The issue is many of us do not like confrontation unless we know that we can take our oppressor. We don't mind confrontation in our family. We don't mind confrontation with our friends or what have you, but we don't like confrontation when it comes from an external source, because we know an external source isn't going to necessarily have the mercy that we can get from family or what have you. And so we give up after being told no a time or two. I see that with authors or what have you. A lot of times authors and entrepreneurs, they say, God gave me a book, God gave me a business, but they give up after having been told no a couple of times. They give up after, having to deal with you doing business and it's just like you're not making a profit and you going all out your way and you doing this. And so they get frustrated and they say, well, at least I know when I was working a 9 to 5, I still had a paycheck. I knew every Friday that my paycheck was going to be in my account, or every Wednesday or every Thursday, my paycheck was going to be in my account. And so now having to run a business, I'm sitting here like, oh, I really need some orders. As a business owner, I've had to deal with that many times, like, oh, y'all come in and place some orders. But at the same time, I've even thought, there have been times where I've thought maybe I need to go get myself a traditional job and just work that. But I've come to understand that if I ever want to succeed in business, I can't go back. I can't go back to Egypt. I know that in Egypt they got fed. I know that in Egypt I had certain things, but that's not necessarily, or that's not where God is calling me to. And so I have to focus forward and deal with the hardship. I have to deal with the things that happens in business, because what is it doing? It's giving me revelation. It's giving me information. It's helping me to pull forward, and it's going to help me to help pull other people out. When they say, Tiffany, I've been in business for this many years and I've been doing this consistently, it's like I'm stuck. And so I'm able to come and I can say, okay, this is why you're stuck, and this is a seasonal thing, and so you may need to do this or what have you. That's the purpose of pushing past it. But a lot of times people don't want to go beyond the no. A lot of times people get to the point where it's just like, okay, they told me no, and so people trying to oppress me and all this other stuff. You can't be oppressed unless you allow yourself to be oppressed. You can have people trying to oppress you, but if you're pressing harder than they are, then they have to fall back. If you're pressing in prayer, if you're pressing in diligence, if you're pressing harder than they are, then they have to fall back. They don't have a choice but to fall back. But all too often we use the fact that it's not easy. We say, okay, especially in the African American race, for somebody like Donald Trump, it was easy because his complaint was what his dad gave him $1 million and he basically called that poor. Okay, even though it sucks and we can look at him and laugh, but the reality is that's his reality. That's the truth. That's his reality. And so for him, that's his version of a testimony. Now, most of us, we left our parents' house without 15 cents to our name. And so we look at him like, dude, please, you know what I could do with $1 million. But I want you to understand that with a millionaire, their parents' top step is their bottom step. I want to say that again. If when God makes me a millionaire, let's say I get children or what have you. Let's say my net worth is $25 million. My children come up in $25 million. Then guess what? That's their bottom step. That's their poor place. $25 million is their poor place. That's the place where they're accustomed to. And so for them, they're seeing all these toys and all this other stuff, but it doesn't mean that they're going to have a happy childhood. Most people who can tell you who have grown up poor can tell you that, hey, listen, we had some pretty decent childhoods. We learned how to play with stuff. We learned how to make toys out of the wilderness. We went outside. Hey, you turn a spider into a toy. You turn, me and my brother, we used to dig up earthworms and stuff like that. We used to catch tadpoles. We had these ditches. I remember when we lived in one house for a couple of years. But we had these ditches near our house. We used to go catch tadpoles. We would play with nature. We would take sticks and make drums out of stuff with it. I remember we moved into this other house when I was in the 5th grade. What was the name of that street? St. James Street. St. James Street. We had this long ditch on the side of our house, and we can go, when we looked into that ditch, we saw, fish and stuff like that, for the most part, minnows, and I think my dad said the other one was called shad. We used to catch them. Shad looked like goldfish, but we used to catch minnows and shad. We used to catch crawfish. We made nature into our playground. Nature became our playground, so being poor does not restrict you from having fun as a child. You can still find a way to have fun, and so I think that we had, and I mean, this is just my experience, I think that we had more fun than rich kids. Because rich kids had a bunch of toys to play with. And one thing about toys is that you get bored after a while. I don't know about y'all, but I can get something new and I'll get bored with it after a while. It no longer excites me. But when it came to wilderness, there was always something new. I remember when I was 10 years old, and I'll move on. I remember when I was 10 years old, we were living on St. James Street. And we had some relatives to move in with us and what have you. And they caught on that it was some wildlife in the ditch and stuff like that. So I remember them going out, my brother and my cousin, two of my cousins, they were standing in the water. They had their pants leg pulled up, and they had this bucket, and they would scoop the water. Because it was just like, I don't know, it had to be connected to a river or something like that, because it was a continuous flowing water. But they would scoop the water, and they would bring it back onto the land, and they would pour it down. They would come up, because it was like, it was a ditch. But it was long. You couldn't see the end from the left or the right. It went all the way down into the woods or what have you. But they would scoop it, and they would come out and pour the water out onto the ground. What made them stop standing in that water was the day they poured a leach out. And me and my brother still laugh about that to this day. They were pouring the water out. We didn't know that there were leeches in Mississippi. We didn't know that. And so they were pouring the water out, and something came out the bucket that looked like a leaf. And so, they didn't think anything about it till the thing started moving. And when it started moving, we panicked, and they went and got my uncle. He came. He got a piece of paper and scooped it up on the paper. He took it in the house. His wife started screaming. I remember he bought that thing outside, and he set the paper on fire, and he let it burn the leech, and that thing made a sound. I remember that. But that was my childhood. We made nature into our toy. All of nature became our toy. So we didn't necessarily have a terrible childhood in respect to playing or what have you. We still found things to do. We would go outside and race each other. That was one of my favorite things. I used to be, when I was younger, before I got the chest and all this other stuff that women get, when I was younger, I used to be the fastest runner. You could not, it was hard for somebody to dust me. It got to the point where my dad would even bet the other kids that they couldn't beat me, the neighborhood boys or what have you. You couldn't beat me running. And so we would always have these long streets, and we would get out, and I would race the boy. I remember a couple of times where some boy, like somebody's cousin, would come in the neighborhood, and they were like, okay, my cousin can dust you, and the cousin did dust me, or what have you. And so I think when people lose for so long, they become so acclimated with losing that they just continue losing. And so it took new people to come into the neighborhood just visiting, and they would dust me, or what have you. But the people in the neighborhood, wherever we moved, they couldn't beat me. And so that's just a point of revelation for you guys. Let's go ahead and move on. A lot of people, of course, were arguing, this is where we were, well, the white man won't let me move forward. Every time I take 2 steps forward, someone is there to push me 4 steps back. Some people have truly dealt with oppression, but this is not always the case. The issue is many of us do not like confrontation unless we know that we can take our oppressor. We know that our oppressor has mercy. You know, it's a family member, schoolmate or something like that. And we give up after being told no or a time or two. Some of you have been trying to go to college, you've been trying to get a job, and you were told no, and so now you have settled down. That is a mark of a slave. You didn't settle down, and you just taking whatever is thrown at you. That is a mark of a slave. The mark of a leader is to keep pushing. The mark of a leader is to take the no and to bend that thing until it has no choice but to scream out yes. Okay, slavery has affected our relationships. Let's talk about it. Slavery has affected many of our relationships, finances, and almost every aspect of our being. But the great news is it did drive many of us closer to God. You see, when people are oppressed, they either become bitter or they become better. 79% of African blacks are Christian. 79%, now being different denominations, but 79% of African blacks are Christian. Additionally, slavery has strengthened some black families, all the while destroying others. So let's stop and talk about relationships. Back in the slave days, now I want you to understand that when there's a mindset, it carries on to the children and the children's children. It becomes a generational curse. It becomes a stronghold or a system. And until that thing is broken, it will continue on. Until you actually address the mindset, until you actually say that this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this, it does not go away. Until you speak to that mindset and say, you're not going to pass through me. Your time is done in this family. Until you do that, that mindset continues to travel through your family. It becomes a system, a generational curse, or something that's constantly playing out in your family. And so when it comes to slavery, we all know for the most part, most of us know that what they would do is the slave owners would get a stud. They didn't want to breed the weak black guys. They wanted to breed the ones who were strong because they believed that strong men produce strong children. And so what they would do is they would get the strong guys and they would make an agreement. For example, let's say this guy, him and his wife, they're a slave owner, and they have a girl who's a slave or what have you, and they decide we want to breed her. We want to have us some babies over here so we can either sell the baby or turn them into slaves ourselves. And so what they would do is they would make an agreement with maybe a slave owner up the street, or what have you. They'll make an agreement with them because they check his slave out and they pay what was called a stud fee. They would pay a stud fee, and so they would allow him to come over and sleep with the woman, and he wasn't going to be there to raise the child. He likely never even saw the child. He wasn't there to raise the child. It was all about reproducing slaves or what have you. And so, believe it or not, this is still playing out. And this is why we see a lot of men don't know how to be in a relationship and stay put to raise their child, because it's something that's in their blood. It's something that their fathers did. If you notice that in even black families where you see the educated black man, where he is around to raise his children, he's married to the mother, he has a decent job or a decent to good job, the mom has a decent to good job. You notice one thing about them is that they tend to have their children, they'll put their children through school, they'll do a whole lot of stuff with their children. When they get married, they play that out as well. They always end up marrying well. They always end up marrying somebody who comes from a stable home in most cases, and their marriages also survive. And every once in a while you'll see that one child in the family who doesn't marry somebody who comes from a stable home, and he'll go out here and he'll mess with somebody, end up having a child, and he'll start a trend in his version or in his bloodline that wasn't necessarily there. That's because breaking up and divorce is a spirit. That's something that constantly travels with you. And the sad part is, if you don't call it what it is, if you don't take the time and allow God to deal with you in your wilderness season, you're going to try to bring that into the blessing, into your marriage with you, and God's not going to bring you to the promised man. God's going to sit there and allow you to keep going into your wilderness and humping whoever you want to, and getting into relationships with guys who are in the wilderness with you, men who don't know how to stick around. Men, it's not in their blood to stick around, because this is something that has been in there for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's something that has been there for a long time. And so you're expecting this man to come out and to love you because you're a good woman, and he doesn't. And it ends up being confusing to you, not realizing, baby girl, you breeded with somebody who's still in slavery right here. He's still in bondage right there. He's still in his mind. And so all he knows how to do is to be around for a certain period of time. That's why I teach you guys what you have to do when you come in contact with a man. The first thing you want to evaluate is his system. You want to have some conversations. You definitely don't want to fornicate with him because you're only engaging in a system with him. You may think that you're special or that you're prettier than the exes, and so your results are going to be different. But I can tell you, I've met too many pretty women who can tell you, oh man, that they sit up here, they were supermodel gorgeous, and it's confusing to them. Like, I came in and I was a really good woman for him, and I treated him well, and I was faithful to him, and I did all this stuff, and he still cheated on me. He still left me. I don't get it. I don't get it. Because of that bondage in him, it's not going to allow him to stick with anybody. But let's deal with you, woman of God. See, that bondage in you has a tendency to push men away. See, the thing about in slavery is that the spirit of fear came on us so deeply that now I'm not against corporal punishment, but a lot of times our parents became absolutely abusive because of that. Because here's the thing, a black woman had to teach her son to obey because she knew that he could actually get killed. She could watch her son get beat, and so she felt like, if I beat you, I'm going to have more mercy than that slave owner. And so what she would do is, while her son is going through rebellious stages, she would beat the crap out of him. She beat the crap. She had to instill fear in him in order to get him to survive. You know, right now, to this day, we're still dealing with the spirit of fear. It's a spirit, again, guys, it chases us. It chases us all around. It chases us into debt. It chases us into welfare offices. It chases us all over the place. And you have to turn around and confront that thing. You have to turn around and confront that thing. Let me see where I was. Okay, it is normal for us to carry an ungodly mindset when coming out of bondage, but it's up to us to put away or divorce that mindset. But again, to do this, we have to forgive our oppressors and put away the spirit of blame. We have to forgive. That means, you know what? The people who had my family in bondage and slavery, I forgive them. As a matter of fact, let's go back a little bit further. I forgive the African slaves who may have enslaved, because not all Africans were enslaving Africans or what have you. Some of the slaves were taken into captivity. Europeans went over there. They were trading guns and stuff like that. But there are some of them who traded with African slave owners. And so I forgive the African slave owner. I forgive, if it wasn't an African slave owner, I forgive the white guy who went over there and took my great-great-great-great-great-granddaddy and put him in chains. I forgive him. I loose him, because you know what? At the end of the day, by me freeing them up, I get to move forward. Do you know that many of us have forgiven the people who hurt us, but we haven't forgiven slavery? Or the people who held, because we have a tendency to measure things. And so we measure slavery, and we know that it was catastrophic. It was horrible. But the thing about it is that a lot of us are still mad at white people. We're still mad, and that's the thing. I tell people this all the time to just help freedom. I said, not all whites are bad, not all whites are good. There's some good whites and there's some bad whites. You got to remember, the Civil War was a war fought by mostly whites against whites, because there were whites in the North who were against slavery. There were whites in the South who were for slavery. And so that means that there's good and bad on both sides. There's good and bad on both sides. But we got to stop being in this mindset that we accept what is bad and we cover it up because this is a black man. I'm going to tell you a mindset that I grew up in the South, and I see it in the African American race, and we got to pull it down. The mindset I grew up with in the South. And for those of you who came up in places like Mississippi, Alabama, and Arkansas, you can relate to this. The mindset that we came up in the South is that if your uncle raped you, if he molested you, you kept it in the family. You didn't tell the police, because you know what? Blacks have been oppressed enough, and if the police got a hold of him, it was no telling what they would do to poor little uncle. And so you had to keep it in the family. And so your family pretty much hushed you, and they dealt with him the way they wanted to. But yet and still, you sat up there, and when Thanksgiving came, Uncle's still sitting at the table with you. Uncle still, we kept it to ourselves. And we're still doing that to this day. We're still doing that to this day. We're still, oh no, he's innocent, no, he's good. Don't you say nothing. You keep that to yourself. Now, you know what them white folks would do if they knew, no, your uncle's sick, your uncle been through some stuff. And we are still doing that to this day. We're still doing it, but we're just doing it now, where when we see other African Americans who do evil, we're still trying to protect them. We're still trying to say, oh, no, 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 no. It's a race thing. It's a race thing. And in reality, in some cases, it's a race thing. And in some cases, it's a right or wrong thing. But the problem is, we feel like we need to protect. We feel like we need to protect our own, even the bad ones. And we got to stop doing it. We got to say, okay, this guy's bad, this guy is good. This guy is bad, this guy is good. We got to get to the point where we start doing that. So let's go ahead and move on. To move forward, we have to stop looking back. This is for those of you who came out of relationships as well. The Israelites, when they came out, they continued to complain and say, and when we were in Egypt, we had this. They kept looking back. But to move forward, we have to stop looking back. They were so used to being slaves that they spent most of their freedom complaining. They were so used. And so I want you guys to understand that many of you are in a wilderness season. You are out of the bondage. You got delivered from the demons. But you're in a wilderness season where it doesn't seem like things are working. You know, you're waiting on God to give you a good job, good career. You're waiting on God to move you out of your parents' home. You're waiting on God to do something, and you're having to deal with the discomfort of that season. And it can be really frustrating because you're looking at it that, hey, I paid my tithes. I've gone to church. I've done this and I've done that. You're looking at it from that standpoint, but you're in a wilderness season. I want you to understand that the wilderness season is not designed by God to just oppress you. The wilderness season is to get you to drop off a mindset. See, you can get caught up in the fact that I'm Christian and I love God and I've been abstinent and I've been faithful paying my tithes. You can get caught up in that, but you can still have a mindset that God said has to die. And God is saying, let that wilderness mindset go. I want you to stop blaming this guy for what he did to you. I want you to forgive your daddy. I want you to forgive your mama. I want you to forgive people. And so one of the things about unforgiveness is that thing can lodge so deeply into your belly. It can lodge itself so deep in your spirit that you don't even know it's there. That's one of the things about unforgiveness until God starts getting ready to bless somebody that hurt you. See, that's when you find out that you still got unforgiveness in you. When God get ready to bless the person who hated on you. When God get ready to bless the person who abandoned you. When God get ready to bless them, you'll find out if you've forgiven them or not. If you have forgiven them, you'll say, well, God bless them. I'm happy for them. But if you haven't, I don't understand why God bless people like him. It's like, okay, I'm over here. I've been abstinent for 5 years. I done did this and I done did that. And it's like God always blesses. And if you thinking like that, you have missed the mark. You thinking like that, you done miss who God is. You don't understand the heart of God. So you have to forgive. You have to forgive. Let's go ahead and move on. And also, before we move on, we got to put away the spirit of blame. In the spirit of blame, you are right, but you're still wrong at the same time. Okay, again, I can say, hey, I was cheated on. It was right. But let's go back further than that. If I go back further, I can say, okay, I didn't do right by God. I was in fornication. I was out here trying to do things my way. I was dabbling between the church and the club. I didn't understand the heart of God. I wasn't reading my Bible that much. I wasn't going to church that much. If I was to go and talk about that way, then there was a time when I was going to church, but obviously I wasn't receiving what was being taught up in there. I wasn't receiving it like I should be receiving it. So it was a little bit of it that was sticking to me, but the rest of it I was expelling. And so I'm sitting up in there. I get out of church. I get in my car and I cut on this music that goes against the will of God, and I allow that thing to keep feeding a mindset that God was trying to destroy. I allow that thing to keep feeding a mindset that God was trying to destroy. And so I can look at my intentions and I can say, I was a good woman. I've always been a good person. I've always tried to do right by people. I can look at that and I can say, oh, woe is me. I can sit there and say, you know what? I'm just tired of people. Because you know what? I'm a good person. I try to do right by people. I done had friends who they turned their back on me. They done dogged me. People didn't talk about me after I had tried to help them. I would have gave them the shirt on my back. As a matter of fact, a couple of them I did give the shirt on my back. I done did all of this. I can sit there and get caught up in that. Or I can go back further than that. I can go back a little bit further and say, my ancestors was selling people. Some of my ancestors, in Africa, they were selling people into slavery. They had slaves themselves. I can go back a little further and say, you know what? And some of those people, even though they were in slavery, it was terrible for them to be in slavery. But what is prison? What is prison? I can say, well, a lot of them had been arrested for crimes. I can go back and say, you know, hey, listen, let's go back and dig this thing all the way up. And I can say, all of this is the result of disobedience to God. Let's stop there. All of this is the result of disobedience to God. I can go back far. But it's how willing, or how far are you willing to go? Or are you stuck at your intentions? Are you stuck at, well, okay, so I was going to do right by him. I ain't never cheated on him. I ain't never did this. Are you still stuck there? Because if you stuck there, you can't get the promised man. You can't get the stuff that God wants for you. And sadly enough, God won't allow you to go into your blessing because you won't let go of a mindset. And God's not trying to put you on a platform to promote that mindset. He's not trying to bless you where you get on the platform and promote your pride. He's not trying to bless you and put you on a platform where you see some things into the ears of your children where they grow up hating their father. God's not trying to bless you in that. He wants you to be able to come back and look at your daughter in her face and she's hurt because daddy ain't coming around and say, baby, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Your mama was dumb back then. It's just as much my fault as it is your dad's fault. I did some things that I shouldn't have did. I should have waited till I was married. That way, when you came into this earth, you would have had a daddy. I should have waited on God, but I didn't. I made a lot of poor choices, baby. I made a lot, and I chose that man for you. And I just want to say to you, I'm sorry. And so just forgive him, because both of us were silly back then. Forgive him. He don't understand what he's doing. Jesus said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. He don't understand what he's doing. Baby, he came out of a slavery system. That mindset is still, but I want to teach you how not to go there. I want to teach you how not to get stuck like that. I want to teach you, you can either do that with your children, or you can sit there and say, your dad is sorry. I saw him in the neighborhood up the street, probably got that girl up the street pregnant. And you can lead your children into the same bondage that you were in. It's up to you. So to move forward, we have to stop looking back. Nowadays, slavery looks like this. An abusive relationship. When you're in an abusive relationship, you constantly make excuses for the abuser. And I know I'm talking to somebody on here where you have been dealt with, you know, somebody has been beating on you, somebody has been treating you all kinds of ways, but you sit there and you make an excuse, because here's the thing. You will always focus on the good of the abuser. I've been in an abusive relationship before, and I know that it's bondage. I know that in an abusive relationship, you'll start focusing more on the potential of the abuser. You start looking, well, he's not a bad person. And so you tell yourself you're not being abused because I fought back. That's what I told myself. I fight back. An abused woman, I thought that was the woman that laid on the floor and covered up her face. I thought that's what an abused woman was. I thought that was her, but I fought back. Not realizing it took an old friend of mine who was in my life at that time, and her dad had killed her mother when she was just 8 or 9 years old. She had been raised by her grandmother. She had been raised in the agony of knowing that her dad shot her mother several times. Why? Because her dad had been married to another woman while married to her mother. He was committing bigamy. He was married to another woman. Her mother found out, and her mother decided, I don't want to be with you. And so the dad, he had it in his head, you're not going to leave me. You know, you're going to let me have things my way. That's a bound man. And so he decided to take her life. And he caught her on her lunch break one day and tried to force her to come back with him. And she wouldn't come. And he shot her up several times and killed her mother. And so she was my friend, and she was just really on me, trying to help me. She said, Tiffany, I watched my mama go through the same thing that you're going through. When are you going to wake up and realize this man is abusing you? And it was so hard for me because of the bondage of my mind. It was so hard for me until I finally realized one day God began to open my eyes. I'm sure she was interceding as well as other people were interceding. I had people who weren't interceding, people who, you know, when my mom found out, my mom was just like, I'm going to call your cousins, you know, and what have you. She knew that my cousins were going to commit a crime, and I was like, don't do that. Don't involve them in this, or what have you. But slavery nowadays looks like an ungodly relationship. Excuse me, in an abusive relationship. an abusive relationship. It also looks like an unstable, ungodly relationship where you constantly work and trying to make the man love you, trying to make the woman love you, but not realizing that the person is bound. They're not free to love. A bound person does not understand the heart of love. They don't understand the height, the depth, and the width of love. They don't understand love like that. But you spend your time trying to convince them to love you, trying to teach them to love you. So you're constantly doing the right thing for the wrong man, or you're constantly doing the right thing for the wrong woman. You're constantly running your wheels, turning, and you're doing everything thinking he'll catch on, not realizing that your system and his system is completely different. He's comfortable in his system, and so he don't see anything wrong with it. He loves the fact that you're a good woman. He loves the fact that you take care of home. He loves that, but at the same time, he also loves going out there sleeping with other women. He also loves going out there, going to parties and doing all this other stuff. He likes his drinking. He likes all that. That's slavery. When you get in a relationship with a person like that, you have volunteered to become their slave. Anytime you get in a relationship with a slave, you are also a slave. Anytime you get into a relationship with a slave, you are agreeing to become a slave. You have to wait for God to take you to the free man. Let's go ahead and move on. Another thing that slavery looks like is refusing to separate oneself from toxic people. So you've been friends with your girl for 20 years and you know she's loyal. She's not loyal to you. She's loyal to a mindset. I had to learn this. I'm going to tell you something. For those of you who are 20 years old, listen to me. A lot of people aren't loyal to you. They're loyal to the mindset that you're in. Come out the mindset and see what happens. Come out that mindset and see what happens. You come out that mindset, the very first thing people like to say, you think you better than us. She getting too good. She thinks she better than the rest of us. That's slavery. They're loyal to a mindset. And so when you refuse to separate yourself from toxic people, you are a slave. My apostle, he was talking one time about it, and he said, if you have the same friends that you had when you were a child, and you don't got really no new friends, there's something wrong with that. That means you haven't transitioned here. There should be a transitioning in your life where people with certain mindsets begin to fall away because your mind is constantly being renewed. And so can two walk together except they are agreed? You need to find people that you can agree with, but in order to do that, you have to constantly change your mind. Most of the time we don't like changing our mind because that means that we're going to offend the people who've been the most loyal to us, or really been the most loyal to the mindset. They've been the most loyal to the culture that we've enslaved ourselves to. They've been most loyal to that. And so we know they'll fight for us. We know that they're there for us. We know that if we don't have anything, we can go stay with her. We know that. And so for the most part, we become afraid. We become fearful of moving out of a mindset because that means that we have to go through a wilderness season where we don't necessarily have any friends. We don't have anybody to talk to. We don't have anybody to lean on. But it is in that season that God wants you to talk to him the most. It is in that season that God wants you to lean on him. That's the whole purpose of the wilderness season. God wants you to talk to him and say, okay, God, I'm scared. I'm sitting here, I'm dealing with the bills, and one thing I can say is when I was friends with Sherry, I knew that Sherry would, I always had some place to go, but now that I'm no longer friends with Sherry, what am I going to do? God says, I got you. I got you. Don't worry about that. I got you. And so another thing that slavery looks like is watching ungodly shows. This reality TV, listening to ungodly music, and ascribing to those mindsets. When you're watching those shows, you're just bound. These are the things we don't like to talk about. Remember, we asked in the beginning, can we have a hard conversation? Can we have a hard conversation? Watching ungodly shows. If you're sitting here and you're watching reality TV and you say, man, I just know it's good, you're a slave. You got to call slavery what it is. You're a slave. You can relate to the mindset. See, because I can't relate to the mindset, I can't watch it. I'm familiar with the mindset. I know the mindset because I grew up in it. But I can no longer relate because I had to grow out of the mindset. So that means that it aggravates me. It agitates me. If I'm watching it, I'm like, this is complete ignorance. This is foolishness. This is not how black women are. This isn't something I want to promote myself as. No, I don't want this. And so why is it that the media is promoting this stuff? That's going to upset me. So if you're watching that kind of stuff, you need to pray your way out of it. You need to pray your way out of that Egypt. You need to pray your way out because you end up with long blonde hair and blue contacts and you with long fingernails and you end up becoming a stereotypical bound black woman where you popping your gum and you got like 5 kids and you living in the ghetto and you on all types of assistance and stuff like that, but you looking sharp at the club. You got to break out of that bondage. Stop allowing the music. Listen, some of these rappers that we're listening to, some of these shows we're watching, these people are slaves, and you're watching them because they're rich slaves. You're watching them because they're entertaining and they're binding you. You end up getting a soul tie with a slave. That means you're tied to the slave. Remember that even in Africa, they would tie them together, and many of them would die because they had a long commute between the slave station and the ship. So many of them would die because of who they were tied to. Many of them would die. And so the thing is, for you, anytime you're listening to a musician, anytime you're watching those shows, you are chaining yourself to Nene Leakes. You're chaining yourself to these people. You're chaining yourself to a mindset. You have to rise above that mindset. You have to get to the point where you say, that's not how a black woman is, and let me show them this not how a black man is. Let me show them. You have to get to the point where you say, let me do something different. Let me go ahead and offend the circle that I'm in. Because as an African American, I got to tell you, you have to offend your circle. I'm sorry. When you're coming out of bondage, you have to offend your circle. That means that homegirl calls you up and she's like, let's go to the club. I don't go to the club no more. I don't go to the club no more. What? You done went to that church and you all getting all religious on me? Call it what you want. I love you, but I don't go to the club no more. You got to offend that mindset. You got to understand that she going to talk about you because she loves her bondage. She loves her place. She don't want to come out of Egypt. She's fine there. And so for her, when you start coming out, that's the equivalent of you just another person who's walking out of my life. Now you think you too good. You got to go ahead and offend her. That's how you can help her out. If you want to pull her out, yeah, she going to talk about you. She going to separate herself from you. That's cool. But at some point when God gets you to where he wants to get you to, it shows her that you can be from the ghetto, from a bad mindset, having grown up in public assistance, watching your family fight all the time. You can come out of there and stand on the other side of a suburban area or in the suburbs in a nice big 2 or 3 story house that's 4,500 square feet. And this is a neighborhood where all the houses are $500,000 and up. Or, you know, if you're living in California, $2 million and up or what have you. You can show her that. And so from there, even though she's no longer in your life, she'll begin to study. And she'll say, I remember one of the things that she was doing, she stopped going to the club. So she'll stop going to the club simply because you made it. Simply because you came out of it. Okay. Slavery also looks like, and we're going to talk about this one, competition amongst black women. Competition amongst black women. You know, here in Georgia, I'm thinking it has to be, Atlanta has to be a predominantly black state. And I can say that it's frustrating. It's frustrating. In a lot of cases, I've had times where you can be let's say I'm coming into Walmart and I'm coming around, I'm trying to pull into a parking space. There's this sister who is coming out. She looks in the vehicle, sees I'm a black woman, she's a black woman, and what have you. She take her attitude, she take her polar time. She take her polar time because of their mindset. She thinks that a black woman is her enemy because her mama was her enemy. She thinks that a black woman is her enemy, and that's the way that she's been raised. That's a slavery mindset. It's a slavery mindset. And so we see that competition on the job where, you know, you working, for example, the office is 95% black, and you got like, let's just say 100 people working there, so 95% white, and there's only 5 other blacks that's working there alongside you, and 3 of them are male, so you don't have a problem. But you got this other black female, and she's constantly throwing you under the bus, constantly trying to make you lose your job because she wants to be the token black woman. She wants to be the only black woman up in that place. She wants to be the only black woman. And so now you sitting there and you frustrated because you don't understand. We should be able to relate to each other, but that's slavery. In slavery, people compete. In slavery, it's like people have a mindset that there is not enough blessings for the both of us. There is not enough men for all of us. It's not enough, so I'm going to take your man. I'm going to do this. That's that competition. That's slavery. That's bondage. You don't ever want to be in a mindset that you can relate to that. So let's go ahead and move on. And the last one, nowadays, slavery looks like getting on public assistance and getting stuck. getting on public assistance and getting stuck. And so let me give this disclaimer because I have to give it. I had a girl, I spoke on this some years back. I had a girl to reach out to me, and she was infuriated with it. And she was like, and I said something about God not sending a husband into that bondage to rescue a woman. You got to pull yourself out. And she was like, she's on public assistance and God's going to send her husband in there to get her, what have you. And I'm just like, I'm not judging you. My family was on it most of my life. What I'm saying is this: you gotta want better. You done got into a comfortable place. You done got into a comfort zone, and you gotta come out of it. It's scary because public assistance, the way it's set up, is going to make you where you're just like, well, if I don't have a high school or a college education, or let's just say I don't have a college education, if I don't have a college education, then what's the point of me getting a job if what I'm making on my job is not too much more than what I'm getting in public assistance? What's the point of me doing that? The point is you can get a promotion on your job. The point is you can take some skills from your job, some things that you can implement in your own business. The point is you can get, of course, promotion from your job. The point is you need to get your system, your mind, you need to get your body acclimated to working. If you don't, then guess what? Public assistance becomes a bondage to you. When it becomes an idol, when it becomes something you depend on, it becomes an idol. When it becomes an idol, it becomes a generational curse. I want to say it again because there's nothing wrong for those of you who say, I just got on it because I'm in college and I'm struggling and I got kids. Okay, that's fine. You're only supposed to get on there temporarily. You're supposed to be looking for a way out of it because you don't want to stay in that thing for too long because you're going to get comfortable. That's the reality. You're going to get comfortable. You're going to get to the point where public assistance pays my bills. It takes away the stress. It takes away the frustration. It takes away me having to deal with the reality of having a 7 to 4 job. Having to get up in the morning. It takes all that stress away. All I got to do is lay around my house. But you're a slave to the system. You're a slave to it. And you end up raising your children in a bad neighborhood. You end up raising your children in a mindset, and then you end up mad at the father of the children because he goes somewhere and he decides to live better than y'all. You get mad at him. He over there with that woman and they got a big house, but you could have did the same thing. All you had to do was get past your feelings. All you had to do was get past yourself and say, you know what? I'm not going to be like my mama. I'm not going to be like my grandma. I am going to have an education. I am going to go out here and do good with my life. I ain't going to be stuck on no man. I'm going to wait on God to send me my husband. But in the meantime, I'm going to be abstinent and holy. I'm going to work. I'm going to get out here, go to school. I'm going to learn as much as I can. I'm going to write the book. I'm going to start the business. I'm going to do everything that God told me to do. And my husband to come find me. My husband to come find me. But again, if you get on public assistance and you get stuck there, then you have become a slave all over again. And so let's go ahead and get into this, and then we'll go ahead and get into the questions. Real quick, I got 10 pointers. I'm going to go through these really quick because I know that we've been on here for a minute. And so how to break the bonds of slavery. This is what a lot of you have been waiting on. How to break the bonds of slavery. Number 1. Forgive everyone who's hurt you, including the slave masters from back in the day. They not just the ones who were guilty. You can go back further than that. It's the same thing in your life now. Who was your slave master? Was it your ex-boyfriend? Was it your mama? Who was your slave master? Forgive them. Forgive your slave masters. Number 2, denounce the sins of your ancestors, both paternal and maternal. Denounce them. Say whatever witchcraft, grandma or great grandma or any of my ancestors played with, both on my dad's side and mom's side of the family, I renounce that witchcraft in the name of Jesus Christ. I decree and declare that it is no longer a part of my blood. I break it off of my children. I denounce whatever, if they made slaves of my other ancestors, whatever evil they did, whatever curses they spoke, whatever murders they committed, I renounce those sins in the name of Jesus. I break them off of my blood right now. I renounce the sin of fornication, adultery, because some of you, if you can be honest, you got adultery in your blood. Your mama, your grandma, somebody was messing with somebody's husband, and so you have to be honest. That stuff is in your blood. You gotta renounce that stuff, and then from there you can't walk in it. That means if the man is going through a divorce, he's still married. Don't touch him. Don't touch him. Don't entertain him. Don't even entertain him as a friend, because we like to be slick with that. Well, no, we're not courting. We're not dating. He's going through a divorce, so I told him. And I know I'm stepping on somebody's big toe, but I know that we're just friends. No, what you're trying to do is you're dating him all the while calling yourself a friend, because you're waiting on those divorce papers to come through so before you can officially call yourself his girlfriend, thinking that you're tricking the living God, but you're not. You're still committing adultery with this guy, whether you're sleeping with him or not. There is a chance that him and his wife can reconcile. God, it is the will of God that most marriages reconcile. It is the will of God, and so you're getting in the way of that. You have to let that man go. You don't talk to him. You leave him alone. Let him be. That's not your man to touch or what have you. I don't care what he told you about his wife. Number 3, repent for your own sins and live a life of repentance. To repent, because I want to go ahead and free us from the mindset that repent means to say I'm sorry. To repent means I done smacked it up and flipped it and rubbed it down last night, but I get up this morning and I say, God, I'm sorry. I repent. And then Tyrone called me again. Can I come over? And I'm like, yeah. I haven't repent. That means my heart has not completely turned. My heart hasn't completely turned. When you repent, your heart turns back to God. That means that the sin that I may have committed last night, I won't commit again. I've already made it up in my mind. And so I call and have a conversation with Tyrone. I don't think it's a good idea for us to continue this relationship. And if we are, I do want you to understand that what I did last night was a mistake. And so I'm not going to continue having sex with you. That means that you can't come to my house anymore. I'm not going anywhere alone with you. If you want to court me, you're going to have to court me in the right way. And go ahead and watch and wait for Tyrone to fall away, because in most cases he's going to fall away, because the only thing that opened up your life for him to come into it was your sin. You gave that devil a sin offering or what have you. And so you have to live a life of repentance. That means that even though I have been abstinent for me personally nearly 5 years, praise the Lord, but even though I've been abstinent, if I have any thoughts, I need to repent for those thoughts. If I go out and I'm doing something, let's say that I'm in traffic and I yell at one of the drivers and I say, stupid, I've spoken something over their life, I need to cancel it out. I need to say, Lord, I repent. Take that out of me. Take that out. So I'm asking God help to turn my heart. I'm not just trying to manipulate you. I'm not trying to give you lip service. I'm telling you, Lord, turn my heart around. I want to be the type of person who's unoffendable. I want to be the type of person in traffic, when somebody cut me off, I'm like, people. Anyhow, I'm going to pray for this person. I'm going to pray for this person. And so let's go ahead and move on. Number 4. Don't watch or listen to media that binds you. If the music tells you to sin against God, don't listen to it. If it's telling you to make love all night long, don't listen to it. You know you're single. You happen to be single. Don't listen to that stuff like that. If it's telling you to sin, if it promotes sin, don't listen to it. It shouldn't be going in your ear gates. And if it's something that you're watching on television, like reality TV, people are fighting, that stuff shouldn't be coming into your eye gates or your ear gates. Don't watch that stuff. It'll only bind you. It'll only make a slave of you. If you want to get free, watch some things that are free. You guys know I tell you, I watch House Hunters and stuff like that, because I want to learn about property. I want to learn about real estate. I want to learn about how that market goes and the correct terms and stuff like that. I want to know basically what I want in a house or what have you. So I try to watch shows that don't lead me into a mindset or what have you. So let's go ahead and move on. Number 5 is the obvious one. Study and meditate on the word daily. Study and meditate on the word of God daily. That means that you don't get a break no matter how tired you are. I don't care if you've been working all day long and you done went to school and you done came home and I'm just tired because I had to feed these kids. I had to beat little Tyrone. I had to do all this other stuff. You got to put God as your number one. You got to study that word. That's how you grow. Anytime you're studying the word, your heart grows just a little bit more. That's how you grow out of a mindset. That's how you grow out of the bondage that you're in. When the word begins to come in you, then it begins to burst through the seams of those ungodly and those traditional and cultural mindsets that you were birthed in, that you were born in, that you were raised in. The word of God begins to break the seams and bust through the stitches, and next thing you know, you begin to grow outside of it. That's how you break out of a mindset, and that's actually how you also begin to free your family. You got to come out of a mindset before you can deliver anybody else. Let's go ahead and move on. Number 6, pray down offense as soon as it hits you. As soon as I get offended, the very first thing I do is begin to pray. I begin to pull it down. I'm not even trying to wait till the night. I'm trying to pull it down. I don't want to be offended. Because one of the things about offense is that it'll take control of your whole day. If you notice, for example, you wake up to a text message and it's offensive. You wake up, your whole day becomes centered around that text message. It becomes centered around what that person said to you in a text message or what have you. And so you spend your whole day offended. I noticed that. And so for me, I started saying, you know what? I don't want this to consume my day. I don't want this to take over my day. And so from there, I decided to pray down offense. The minute it hits, I don't care if I can't shake it, no matter what, I'm praying, I'm saying, God, give me revelation. God, give me wisdom. Lord, I forgive the person. Help me to forgive. Father, help me to move forward from this. I don't want this to take over my day. And I'm going to tell you, when you begin to pray like that, God will release you. Sometimes it'll take an hour or two, but he'll start to release you. And so your day starts to take a good turn, whereas it was taking a bad turn. At first, it would have ended up being a bad day, but because you were prayerful, it became a good day. Let's go ahead and move on. Number 7, know the strongholds in your family. If your family deals with addiction, for example, addiction to public assistance, go out of your way to avoid getting public assistance, even if that means eating ramen noodles for a season. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, you have to intentionally make yourself uncomfortable, so that's what motivates and pushes you to do better. I've told this testimony before. I'm going to just give you a quick, for those of you who never listened to me before. I remember when I was married, one of the things that I did, me and my ex, we had worked at Tom Wildlick Kia, I think, for 13 days. They hired us, had us to pay a $500 fee just to get hired or whatever. Then they turned around after 13 days and they laid off everybody except for like 2 people. And I think it was like it was a lot of us that had came aboard and paid that money, but they laid off a lot of people. And so the very first thing we did was, for me, when something traumatic happens, I usually numb myself. I don't go into panic. I go straight into, I just go numb. And I think that's a protective mechanism. But my ex went straight into panic. And so he started talking about, we need to go down to the food stamp office and apply for food stamps because we need to eat. We need to do this. And I told him no. And he was like, why? Tiffany, we need to do this. I said, no. I said, we were going to be getting unemployment. I said, the thing about unemployment that was positive is that you couldn't get it for very long. You can only get it from 6 months to a year. And so we couldn't get too acclimated with that. But I knew addiction to public assistance is in my blood. And so I wasn't about to entertain that. I didn't understand generational curses back then. But one of the things I did understand was that that stuff was in my family. And I understood that I could fall into it. I understood that I can mess around and get comfortable and feel like, who am I go working for? I had worked by that time at Walmart for 7 years. And then I quit Walmart to work at Tom Wildlick Kia for 13 days. And so there were many days when I worked at Walmart, I didn't want to go to work. I didn't call out for my job. I called out for my job in those 7 years maybe a handful of times. I came in diligently. For the most part, if I had to take off for any reason, it was a manager sending me home because I was too sick to be there. And so the thing was, I made sure that I went to work. And so I don't remember where I was. Oh, okay. Yeah. And so when he made that suggestion that we get on public assistance, I said no. Because I knew that if we got on it, I knew it was in his family, I knew it was in mine. I knew if we got on it, he was going to be in there playing that video game. I knew that. I knew I was going to be laid up in the house and I was going to become a statistic. I knew that. So I said no. I said no. And he said, what? I said, I want us to get hungry. He's like, what? I said, I want us to be hungry. I said, because that's what's going to motivate us. I need us to become desperate because desperate people plow. Desperate people plow. People who are comfortable don't plow. They just like this because they're afraid if I plow, then it's going to take me out of my comfort zone. It's going to take me out of my comfortability. And so desperate people plow. Comfortable people don't plow. I understood we need to get desperate. And so here we were borrowing money and we were uncomfortable, and that made us like we were in the newspaper. Thankfully, he listened to me in that occasion, but we started going through the newspaper faithfully looking for a job, and I ended up getting hired on to AT&T, and I was making double what I made at Walmart. That's the testimony. I was making double what I made at Walmart. I ended up working there for another 7 years. That was the operative number in my life. God would allow me to work at a place for 7 years. And so let's go ahead and move on. Yeah, know the strongholds in your family, and that's not just public assistance, but also know what's in your family. If pride in your family, you need to go ahead and start praying that down. Don't wait for it to manifest. Pride, and 9 times out of 10, it's already manifesting. Just go ahead and start praying that stuff down. Go ahead and start fighting that stuff. Start pulling it down. Don't entertain those mindsets. Let's go ahead and move on. Number 8, instead of focusing on the wrongs and sins of others, take accountability for your own wrongs and move on. In every relationship, every failed relationship, everything that I've ever gone through, God has taught me not to put the finger of blame at the person. if I point the finger of blame at them, I also have to talk about what I did wrong in it. And so in failed friendships, hey, guess what? I had some failed friendships. And so I can sit back and talk all day long about how the female was this way and that way. But at the end of the day, there was something there that allowed them to be in my life. Like, can two walk together except they be agreed? And so at the end of the day, I tolerated certain things. I sat back and I didn't want to be mean, or I did this or I did that. So that allowed those people to be in my life and to stay in my life. And so instead of focusing on the wrongs of your baby daddy, instead of focusing on the fact that I was good to him and I was faithful to him and I gave him 2 kids and I gave him 3 kids, forgive him and forgive yourself and say, you know what, I messed up forgiving him. Forgive him. Let him go. I mean, for some of you, you need to go ahead and let go of the idea of the two of you getting back together. That's what's keeping your husband from coming. You need to let go of the idea that he going to get his life together and that the two of y'all going to get back together. You need to go ahead and move on. That's why you're so bitter, because you mad. Every time you look around, he's in another relationship with somebody else and he got their stomach sticking out. And so now you're constantly mad. You need to go ahead and go through the grieving period. You've been out of the relationship with the guy for a long time, but you have yet to fully grieve. You got to fully grieve. People come out. You got to understand. Scientists have found that there are 7 stages of grief. When I came out of, when I was married, I was going through a divorce. I studied the 7 stages of grief. I identified and located where I was, because I was like, you know what? I want to know where I am so I can get past it. So I can see progression. I don't want to be stuck in this particular stage, and I want to know where I am. Some of you have never fully went through the 7 stages of grief in regards to a relationship. You went straight to bitterness. You went from crying and then you went to straight bitterness, and you've been bitter ever since. It's been 7 years since you and that dude been together, but you've been bitter and mad at him ever since. And you think you're punishing him, but you're not. You're punishing your children. The children are the real ones who paid the price for their parents' sins. Sadly enough, the children are the real ones who pay the price. And so you can become so stubborn and prideful and say, well, now, he don't come around. You know what it feels like for me to watch my daughter crying? Is it, and can I talk to you real quick? Is it that your daughter has hope because you've given her hope, because you got hope in him returning home? And for him to wake up and all this other stuff, you've had this hope, and you get mad at everybody else. You get mad at the woman he's with. You get mad at his mama. You get mad at everybody. And so she has the same hope that you have, and she's dealing with the same disappointment that you're dealing with, but she's dealing with it with a small heart. She's a small child. And so now she's having to get her heart broken on a whole other level while you sitting up over there waiting on this man to come back and to get it together. Yeah, because I heard that woman he with, I heard she dogging him anyway. You need to let that man go. You need to let that man go. Let's go ahead and move on, guys. Number 9, go back to school. Learn something every day. Write the book, start the business, and do it all the right way. Here's the thing. Life is nothing but a series of responsibilities, and this is something that you kind of pick up on really. You pick it up on early in life if you're a responsible person. For some of you, you won't pick it up until later in life because you don't like responsibility. You kind of tend to run away from responsibility. You go to church, but you don't serve. You go to work, but you only do what's expected of you. You go to the family outings, but you don't really cook much of anything. You're the one that want to bring the ice and the cups and stuff like that. You don't like the life of responsibility. But if you ever want to be wealthy, if you ever want to have a decent life, you're going to have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. You have to do some stuff that you don't feel like doing. You have to do some stuff. My whole day today, for example, was I did mostly everything I didn't feel like doing. My whole day was I'm on the phone, I'm traveling, I'm doing this, I'm taking care of this customer order, I'm talking to this customer. My whole day, I literally today felt like I just wanted to lay out and sleep. Seriously, today, then I come home and I'm like, I really want to relax. It's like 6 something, I really want to relax. Then my dog comes running up to me and he's just pawing me because it's almost time for his walk. And he's like, you gonna walk me, mommy. But I had to realize this is a responsibility that I accepted. And so despite how tired I am, I can't talk about my feelings because I don't want to be a slave to my feelings. Did y'all hear that? I can't constantly keep talking about my feelings. I can't keep saying, I'm tired, I don't feel like it. I can't say that. I have to sit back and say, and this is what I say. Most of the time, when it's time to walk him, I don't really feel like it. And he's just, my dog, he knows he knows the time of day. He'll go run to the window, he'll come run back to me. He'll run to the window, he'll run back to me. Then he'll go to paw at me, he'll go from this side of me, then he'll come to this side of me. He'll keep doing that because he's saying, it's time, you're going to have to walk me. Most of the time, I'm sitting here, now I know he don't understand me, but I'm sitting there and I'm just like, dude, if you only knew how I felt. I'll sit there and say that to my dog, if you only knew how I felt. I know, and I call him personal trainer. I know personal trainer, but I'm serious. I don't feel like walking today. I'm tired. You don't know all that I had to do yesterday. I'm trying to catch up on stuff. I'm mentally tired. I'm physically tired. I'm tired. But yet, listen, I still have responsibility. I still accept the responsibility because that's something that I wanted. And so I get on up, take him for his walk. And that's that, responsibility. Once I jump into it, I'm all right. You got to go ahead and start to do something with your life besides sitting around in your comfort zone waiting on God to send a blessing in there when he's not going to do it. God will send grace into your comfort zone. He'll send mercy. But there are a lot of things you're not going to get while you're in the wilderness. There's a lot of things. And as a matter of fact, God won't bring you out of the wilderness until you drop off some of those mindsets. So you got to go ahead and begin to pull that stuff down. You got to pull yourself out your comfort zone. Go ahead and go back to school. God may be telling you to go to school to become a doctor. You don't think you're smart enough, but you are. You are. It's time for you to go ahead and pull yourself outside of your comfort zone. Deal with people who aren't necessarily relatable. One of the biggest problems that we have, even as African Americans, a lot of us, we like to deal with people that we can relate to. And that's not just an African American thing. I found that that's an African thing. Like I said, I was married to an African, and one of the things I got a chance to see was that he had relatives that lived in Georgia, and I saw that it was a Cameroonian community in Georgia. So a lot of times people would try to move where there were other Cameroonians, and they try to stick close together. And so the ones who did that, my ex, I remember, he learned English a lot more because he worked outside, and we lived in an English-speaking community, and he worked he was already speaking English when I met him, but his English got 1,000 times better. He spoke better English than his sister, who had been living in America for like 10 years because she stayed in a Cameroonian community. She only surrounded herself with Cameroonians. That's all she did. She did not surround herself with people who can speak. And she would work American jobs, but she stayed off to herself. She didn't want to deal with Americans. She had this mindset in relation to Americans. And so it was really hard to understand her for anybody. And for him, people could understand him really, really well. And so the thing is, you got to come outside your comfort zone. You got to come outside of it. You got to go ahead and throw yourself out there. And you'll find that a lot of times the people that you judge aren't like you think they are. For me, one of the biggest blessings that I got was, even though that man, he wasn't the man for me, a big blessing that I got was to be able to travel overseas and to meet people from other countries, especially Africa. That was such a blessing to me because having grown up in Mississippi, I had a misunderstanding about Africa and Africans. I only understood Africa from what I saw on the television set. That was my understanding of Africa and Africans. And for me, having met so many Africans and really hearing their testimonies blew my mind. Hearing women sit back and telling me, hey Tiffany, not all Africa is what you see on TV. There are beautiful places, there are rich places, there are a lot of things, but when people come to Africa, they go to the villages and they feature all of that. And hearing people even talk about cultures that I didn't necessarily understand, it blessed my life. It blessed my life. And so it really expanded me as an author, because I think about, okay, I want to interview. As a matter of fact, my book Why Is There Still 3, the third part hasn't come out yet. We got Why Is There Still 3 out, part 1 and part 2, but the third part hasn't come out, part 3. And so I've gotten some people from Africa to give their testimonies, because that's one of the things I want. I want us to hear a broad spectrum. I don't want us to be limited to what we can relate to. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the last one. Refuse to loan your body to sin. Refuse to loan your body to sin. What does that mean? You have to make up your mind that I'm going to be holy for God. You have to make up your mind that I'm going to take care of this temple that God has given me. This is a fight that I've been in. Now, as far as abstinence, I don't have a problem, but God is teaching me to abstain from certain foods. I'm just like, Lord, let me have this and let me have that, and God has been really, really, really dealing with me, or what have you. But you have got to learn to honor the vessel that God has given you. You have to learn to honor your own body. If you're out here fornicating with somebody, it's only because you're in slavery. You're enslaved to a mindset that if I sleep with him, we get to enjoy the perks of marriage, and eventually we'll become married. And then we can repent and we can work all this other stuff out later. It doesn't work like that. If you want a blessed marriage, if you want God to be the third fold in the cord, you're going to have to do it his way. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. You're going to have to do it his way. There are women even on here right now, I'm pretty sure, that you did it the wrong way, and they got a testimony. You know how many women I counsel who did it the wrong way, and they got a testimony. They sitting up in marriages where they frustrated as all outdoors. The husband never got delivered from fornication. And they come to find out that fornication manifests itself as adultery in a marriage. They come to find that out the hard way. He never ever learned. He didn't learn to respect God enough, to respect himself enough, to respect her enough, to respect the idea or the whole union of marriage. He never learned honor. He never learned respect. One of the worst men you can get into a relationship with is somebody who don't understand honor. Woman of God, I'm going to tell you a secret. If you want a good, godly husband, get somebody who understands honor. Get somebody who has a leader, who's submitted to their leader. Get somebody who understands honor. When you're dealing with somebody who understands honor and they're accountable to somebody, that person understands, because there are just too many people that he respects. First and foremost, he has his love for God. Then there are just too many people that he respects to do you wrong. Because now, not only do he threaten to lose his relationship with you, but it puts a strain on his relationship with the people that he respects. And so you get somebody who understands honor. That's going to bless your life. If he can't honor you without trying to whip his man parts out of his pants and what have you, if he can't honor you, that man's not going to make a good husband. He's just inviting you to a union of slavery. He's inviting you into a temporary set where the two of you get to live in the honeymoon stage of marriage. But when you get into the responsibility stage, he's going to be out. When you get into the, no, that's not true. The old pork, crabs, shrimp, and all that other stuff, that's Old Testament. We're no longer under Old Testament. But when you get into the responsible parts of marriage, that's when he's going to vacate the marriage. That's when he's going to be out peace, because he doesn't know how to deal with life like that. He gets on a job, he works it for 2 to 3 years, and as soon as problems begin to arise, he quits. That's how he deals in life. When it comes to everything else, he quits. Or for the things that he couldn't quit, like his mama and his cousin now, he kind of tunes himself out. So his mama's like, he hard-headed. You notice he's sitting there just like this, like a bump on the law. He hard-headed. Ain't nothing getting in. That man ain't growing. And so if you think you won't get into a relationship with him and help him to grow, you are sadly mistaken. You are sadly mistaken. A lot of times we see people and they look fixable, but they're not. God can fix them, but they're going to have to want it. This is the thing that I learned. A man and a woman has to want God. They got to want to be free. They got to want to have a different testimony than the one that they have. If they don't want it, then you trying to convince them to get it is going to be a waste of your time. And you'll spend several years, thank you, God. Thank you, sis. You'll spend several years making love to him and trying to change his mind, trying to introduce him to good people, only to find out that it's only making him more prideful. He's not interested in your lifestyle. He's not interested in that. And so a man needs to want that before he wants you. He needs to want God before he wants you. He needs to be acclimated with honor. He needs to be acclimated with responsibility. I was standing around talking to some women one day, and we were talking about, and one of the things that came out of my mouth, I said, listen, if the man ain't responsible, I don't want him. If he ain't the type of person that he's been working for a while, if he's not responsible, I don't want him. If he can't commit to something and he always calling out, I don't want him. I don't want no irresponsible man. I don't want, because he's going to constantly keep making excuses. He's going to constantly keep doing it. And so don't waste your time with irresponsible people. So the gist of today's message is, woman of God, man of God, it's time to come out of slavery. But it's up to you. You got to take yourself out your comfort zone. You got to forgive the people who hurt you, the people who hurt your ancestors. You got to forgive your ancestors. You got to forgive everybody and just go ahead and begin to move forward. That's how you get to the blessings. I'm trying to help you guys to walk into a blessing that God has for you. But just remember this. In the wilderness, the goal of the wilderness is to get you to drop off of a mindset that God doesn't want you to have. That poverty mindset, that mammon mindset where you're constantly spending lots of money on clothes and stuff like that. Your children are dressed to the T, but you living in the ghetto. They got to break off of you. See, you need to take that money and invest it, put it in an account. I'm saving up for my children's college education. I'm saving up to get us out of this. I'm saving up so I can do this. I'm saving up. You save up that money and you pull yourself out. That's how you begin to grow out of that, guys. So anyhow, I hope this message blessed you, guys. I'm opening up right now for questions. If you got questions, put them in. I'm not doing any more than 2 questions per person. No more than 2 questions per person, because we end up like we was a couple of times where you have one person asking a ton of questions, nobody else get a chance to answer or to ask any questions. So, guys, go ahead and start getting your questions ready. Go ahead and start getting them in here so I can get them. Remember, I'm not going to scroll up to get to the questions because I will be scrolling for days. If you got any questions, go ahead and get them in, and I'll wait for you guys. And remember, questions don't have to be about what we talked about today. It can be. But if you got a question about life in general, something you may be going through or what have you, then go ahead and get it in. If I don't get questions within the next minute, I'll know to close. Waiting on questions. Remember, leaders speak first, and there are some people on here, they got questions, but they're not leaders, and so they wait for other people to ask questions. So if you're a leader, you go ahead and put your question out. That's just, and so again, one of the things we're going to be doing is leading up. I'm going to be trying to lead you guys out of the follower's mindset, but I do understand that takes a while in some cases. I understand it takes a while. So if you got a question, get it in, guys. I'm going to give it another minute, then we're going to get ready to close. Why God created me as a hypersensitive. Everything that God created, every way that God created us, He created us that way for a reason. For example, I have a tendency, and it goes with your calling. Y'all, for me, I have a tendency, I'm not going to say I'm hypersensitive. I think that a lot of creators are very sensitive or what have you. But for me, I have a tendency, one of the traits I've had ever since I was a child is I love people, but I don't mind loving people from a distance. And so, well, I don't want to talk about that one. One of the traits I have is that I used to think I was too nice. I just did a teaching for you guys that don't know. Go to Sellfy, that's sellfy.com/anointed fire. I just did a teaching on there. Let me see what the name of that teaching is. Give me a second, guys. I talked about one of the, I talked about one of the gifts that I have that I didn't realize what it was when I was younger, and I hated that gift. I hated it with an undying passion. My mom has that gift, and that's called the gift of charity. That's called the gift of charity. Okay, yeah, that's the name of the message, the gift of charity. But I absolutely hated that gift. I hated it because I saw people take advantage of my mom. I saw that my mom was super nice, and there were a lot of people who didn't know how to treat her, what have you. I hated that gift. And so for that reason, as a child, I started, kind of bucking up against people. And the thing was, I didn't realize that's a gift that God gave me. He gave me that gift for a reason. However, I was just being that way for the wrong people. And that was the same thing with my mom. And so the gist of that message, one of the things I teach in that message is with the gift of charity, if you happen to be that person that people say is really nice, you got to have the sword of the Spirit along with it. Otherwise, you will run into people who take advantage of you. And so I had that gift of charity. I remember being married and my ex getting mad at me because I have a positive mindset. Regardless of what I've gone through, I see people, I just see people as good. I know there are bad people out there and whatever. I can discern the bad ones, but for the most part, I like to give people a little chance. And my ex used to scream at me and say, Tiffany, everybody's not like you. And I'm just like, why he's so mean? Why he's getting mad or what have you? And then too, I will say this. It could be a deliverance issue if it's a part where it's starting to affect your life. It could be something that happened to you as a child. It could be fear. People who tend to be very sensitive are really fearful. They're really afraid of something happening, so they're always reacting to the potential of what could happen. And so if you have to go through deliverance, go ahead and go through your deliverance or what have you, and just go ahead and start studying scriptures in relation to faith or what have you, and then change your surroundings as well. You need to have new friends, new people around you. So yeah, would you ever consider doing a trip for women to Africa? Yes, I want to go to Africa so bad. I'm looking forward to going to Africa. So yeah, I would, of course. I think I'm creative. I've always had an image in front of my eye, even in worship. I can't have that void space. What do you think that is? Yeah, and it just sounds like you have an overactive imagination, which is what most creatives have. We have an overactive imagination. Even in prayer, we have to pull down. I could be in prayer and a bunch of other thoughts start trying to come in, and I'm just like, oh, chapter such and such in your book should be this. And if it's good, I'll kind of wander off and I have to pull myself back or what have you. And so yeah, that's just part of being creative. And as a creative, you have to wrestle with yourself. As a creative, you can't allow your feelings to take over. You can't just go with how you feel. You literally have to fight yourself. You have to wrestle with your own mind. You got to pull it. Right. Yeah, and so if you guys don't know, go to selfie.com and get it. It's called the Gift of Charity. Even if you're in a cave because you feel like you're too nice, get it. It's gonna bring you out your cave. It's going to bring you out your cave. How I'm dealing with anger and bitterness. I want to be free. I meditated on the scripture that says put off bitterness. What does it look like to practically put off bitterness and anger? Good question. Is basically intentionally and aggressively forcing yourself to adapt to another mindset. It's studying the word and also giving people credit for, you taking the blame. It's also you taking the blame. If you always focus on your intentions, you'll get mad. If you always focus, because it's like this. I can be on the phone, good example, with my mom, and it can turn into an argument. Now, both of us have good intentions. It's not that I'm bad or she's bad, but we both got good intentions. But we got different ways of trying to achieve. And so I could be on the phone with her and I say, Mom, you need to come down here. I got to get you down here and all this other stuff. And she's just like, no, I'm not going. I feel like this and I feel like that. And I said, Mom, that's fear talking. And so I'm talking to her and so for her, I'm being pushy. For her, I won't let it go because, see, I'm trying to look out for her. But for her, she's looking at it from a standpoint of, I'm the mama, which is that southern mindset, sadly enough, that pride. But I'm the mama, you don't tell me what to do. She's also looking at it from a mindset, well, I feel more comfortable here. I feel like, everything needs to, I bought a house and I paid my house completely off. I feel like I'm giving up my accomplishments and what have you. So neither one of us is wrong for the most part. But the thing is, I can get caught up in the fact that my intentions are good and I can get an attitude. Because I'm trying to help you and you don't want my help. I can get an attitude, or I can look at it from a different perspective. I can say, I can understand her being frustrated. But at the same time, I know that this is best for her. It's the same thing when it comes to relationships and stuff like that. I learned to forgive people. For example, I can look at an ex and say, you know what? Even though he dogged me or he did this, I put myself in a relationship with him. And so I gave him the right and the ability to dog me. It's not like he became a dog when he got with me. He was already there. I just thought I could tame him. And so I give myself that. And that helps me to free them. And it helps me to free the other person. So it's going to be a forgiveness thing. And also you want to get delivered. Because if you've been angry and bitter for a long time, there are three spirits that you're going to be dealing with 9 times out of 10. First and foremost, the spirit of Leviathan. Spirit of Leviathan is the king of the proud. You're also 4 spirits. Not king of Leviathan. It's called the Leviathan spirit. Then there is going to also be pride. Pride is an offensive spirit. It keeps the person from getting delivered. And you're trying to deliver somebody who has pride. One of the things they hear you saying, the first thing you say, Jezebel. If the Jezebel spirit happen to be there, Jezebel come out and they automatically get offended. They go straight into offense. Who's she calling a Jezebel? Not realizing, I'm not even talking to you. I'm talking to that spirit. I'm trying to get it to come out. But pride always has them to get offended. Pride will have you get offended with a deliverance minister before you even know that's a deliverance minister. Because that spirit saying, oh, she can cast me out. I don't want her to get close. And so it can be some kind of interaction where you end up getting offended. So what you have to do is just go ahead and start making up your mind. Say, God, help me to forgive the people who hurt me. And then ask God to change your perspective. Ask him to give you wisdom. And then you have to intentionally pull down offense every day. That's one of the things I do. You intentionally, if somebody offends you, you pull it down. You pull it down in prayer. You speak out loud. I forgive. You have to fight that thing. The other spirits, I mentioned spirits you have to get delivered from is rage. I've watched somebody go through deliverance from rage. And usually when people go through deliverance from rage, they clench their fist and with rage comes murder. If rage is there long enough, murder comes in. It was something else. Oh yeah, spirit of anger. And so those are spirits that you want to go ahead and look to get delivered from. Also, lastly, you want to surround yourself with the right people, because there are some people who come into your life on assignment to open the door for those spirits to come in, and they stand in your life and stay in your life to ensure that you never get free. And so you want to make sure that you get free from all those spirits and from whatever people God doesn't want in your life. And then go through your wilderness season where you may be alone, cry it out, pray it out, and then God will start sending the right people to you. And then find something to look up to or someone to look up to. I remember when I started going to church when I was younger, I found people in my church that I was like, I love how she loves people. Like I would sit back and watch people. And I would see, and I was just a babe in Christ, just coming to Christ. And I would see people, you can tell the fake huggers, the ones that hug you because it's their job, versus the ones who just have a genuine heart of love just by the way they hug people. And so the ones who had a genuine heart of love, you see them reach out. And I used to think to myself, that is so cute. That's how I want to be. That's how I want to be. I want to be that person who has that heart. I want to be that person that God has made me into that person, amazingly enough. When I hug people, I genuinely love them. And so the thing is, you want to find some people to look up to, get around some positive people. God may have to change your surroundings. I know how to get out of laziness, but I don't take the steps to get out of it. What is that? My feelings behind me. No, you know how to get out, but you don't take the steps to get out. That's laziness itself. You don't take the steps because first and foremost, there's fear. Second, there's a comfort zone. Third, there's the fear of the unknown. There are a lot of different things that are binding you. And I tell people to deal with fear. One of the ways you deal with fear is by throwing yourself into the very thing that scares you. If you're afraid to get on a plane, get on a plane. Go ahead and book your ticket. If you're afraid to get on a cruise ship, go ahead and book yourself a cruise. If you're afraid to move out of your city and state, go ahead and start looking for jobs in another city and state. You have to do stuff while you're afraid. My apostle, he talks about that. Do it while you're scared. Do it while you're scared. And while I'm mentioning my apostle, before I get to the next question, guys, Chicago. My apostle is having a school. He's hosting a school of revival in Chicago on September 28th through the 29th, and I'm coming. I'm coming with him. I'm not teaching, but I want to meet you guys there. I would love to meet you guys there. And so with that being said, I want you guys, if you happen to be in Chicago or the Chicago area, I'm flying down there. So I want you guys to come, and so it's going to be in Chicago, and I'll try to put a link in the comment section, but it's going to be in Chicago September 28th and 29th. The featured teachers are my leader, Apostle Brian Meadows. There is Apostle John Eckhart. There is I think he's an apostle as well. No, he's prophet Humberto Renovato, and they're going to have Psalmist Rain. It's going to be amazing, guys. I'm going to be there helping out, but I would love to meet some of you guys. So do me a favor. For those of you who are planning on coming, I want you to email me. I want you to email me at info@anointedfire.com and let me know that you're coming so I can be looking for you. I want to meet a lot of you. If you're in the Chicago area, make sure you let me know. And so, yeah, back to the question. I don't know how to get out of laziness, but I don't take the steps to get out of it. That is the common issue with a lot of us who have been in any type of bondage, because it requires pressure. For me, it requires pressure to go to the gym, and I don't feel like doing it. I don't feel like, listen, that whole vegan thing, I want to eat some food. I mean, that's the thing. I don't really feel like going through that, but I know that it's necessary. I know that it's necessary, so I have to push myself. And so that's the thing about life. You'll never ever feel like doing most of the stuff that's right to do. You'll never feel like doing it, so that means you have to do it when you don't feel like you got to do it while you're scared. And you got to do it when you can't sit there and say, I'm going to start tomorrow, because tomorrow you're going to have another excuse. Somebody going to call you and you're going to get yourself a nice little justifiable excuse, and you're not going to do it. And so you have to start. For those of you who God has told to write a book, you just got to open up a document tonight and just go ahead and start writing. That's how you push past it. Let's go ahead and move on. I recently learned that a guy I am interested in is interested in me. However, he does not pursue me, and I know he's shy. Are there things I can do that do not place me out of biblical order? If he's shy, God did not give us a spirit of fear. If he's shy, that means he's dealing with the spirit of fear. Let him get delivered. Let him get delivered so he can pursue you. And so if you're noticing that he's dealing with shyness, then you just begin to pray down that spirit. Begin to bind that spirit. And I do understand sometimes people are uncomfortable talking to other people, but he has to get past that fear. And so you don't want fear to be the dominating thing in your relationship just because he's afraid to do something, because you're going to always have to take the initiative. Every time y'all go do something, you're going to always, and it's going to become so hard and so frustrating that you're going to start losing respect for him. So let him get past that. So God is just trying to show you how to pray for him. Are there things I can do? Oh, okay, that's the one I just read. What do you do when someone avoids you all of a sudden? It hurt my feelings, LOL. I get avoided at church by someone now. We was cool for a while. Now they just stare. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. If I'm dealing, see, the thing about it is, grown people have a conversation. Grown people talk. Grown people will pull you to the side. Immature people avoid. Immature people have the ways of dealing. And so an immature person can get offended and they go off into a corner and they want you to come chase them. I don't chase people. And so when you're dealing with somebody like that, I let them go to their corner. I let them go ahead and mesmerize, do whatever they feel like they need to do. Let them do their thing. Forgive them and move on. Don't pay them no attention. And eventually they'll come to you. Eventually they'll come to you. And when the person comes and if they try to pull this, hey girl, then you have a conversation. Then you like, hey, what's with this double-minded crap? I don't do that. Then you have a conversation. But if somebody makes it clear that they don't want to deal with me, I'm not going to deal with them. I'm not going to bother them. But I do know people, and I've met many people who their minds are just weird. There are people out there who be cool with you one day and they just withdraw the next day. They go in complete withdrawal. That's because they're broken. And so if I'm dealing with a broken person and they're not speaking, I'm going to let them not speak. But if they come back to me and act like ain't nothing happened, you try that crazy stuff with me, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation. And so if they come and, hey girl, I'm going to look at them and be like, we're speaking? Oh girl, I've been frustrated. I've been going through some stuff. And I tell them, no, I don't do that kind of stuff. I don't do that double-minded. We either cool or we ain't. I don't do this thing where, you're speaking to me one day and you're not speaking. You're going to have to make a choice. I mean, we cool, we're not. I don't treat you like that. Yeah, you right. Do it again. I'm done with you. Do it again. I forgive you, but I'm gonna create some distance. I'll still speak to you, but as far as dealing with you, hey girl, hey, how you doing? I'm gonna keep going. So when you're dealing with people, let people be who they are. Let them manifest who they are and believe who they are. So if they want to be like that, then let them go ahead and do. Don't try to wonder what's going on in that person's head. Sometimes it has nothing to do with you. It could be jealousy. It could be anything. It's just the way that they deal with life. And so you let crazy people be crazy. Let them go off into their own corner. I truly desire healthy relationships and intimacy with others, but I struggle with finding the right people and forming the bonds. I'm not sure where the blockage is. How can I begin to change this? Healthy relationship starts with a healthy heart. So what you're going to have to do is ask God to make your heart healthy. So it could be some instability in your own life. Sometimes when people look for healthy relationships, it has nothing to do with them being healthy. It has everything to do with them being unhealthy and wanting to surround themselves with healthier people. How do I know? Because I was like that. I remember when I went to my first church, I had a very unhealthy heart. And so with that, I wanted to be friends with most people in my church. Well, not most people, young people or what have you. And I became a little bit offended when I noticed that there were people that were nice and hugging me, but they were kind of avoiding me at the same time. They didn't really want to deal with me like that because they knew I had came out the world. Not saying that it was necessarily right on their part, but I wanted healthy relationships, and so that's a normal desire. So what you do is just begin to build on your own heart. Pay attention to yourself. How do you feel? Do you forgive people when they hurt you? Are you controlling? A lot of people are absolutely controlling, and they don't know it. I've talked to friends, and I've had to tell them that they were controlling. They're like, how am I controlling? And I'm like, sweetie, if people don't do what you tell them to do, if you sit back and tell me, I had a friend one time asked me to go on a fast with her, and she said her church was going on a fast. I said, all right. And she told me it was coming up and what have you. And she asked me would I go, and I told her, and at this time I didn't have a church home. I was like, okay, well, I got to pray about it. I said I want to make sure and what have you. So I prayed about it. I genuinely prayed, and I genuinely heard God tell me no. And so when I told her I can't do it because God told me no, or what have you, she got offended. And she said, well, I'm not going to be on the phone talking for a week. And yeah, I'm going to be consecrated. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not going to be on Facebook or what have you. That was her attempt to punish me for not going on a fast with her. One of the things God told me, he said, you don't know what her church is fasting for. You don't jump on anybody's fast. And so long story short, she ended up getting offended. Now, that same girl had a whole lot of revolving door of friendships. And so for her, everybody else is wrong. And so it was just because her heart wasn't healthy. And I can't say that mine was necessarily healthy as well. But because her heart wasn't necessarily healthy, she had the right intentions, but she employed the wrong methods to achieve what she wants. She didn't understand that people are not going to always do what you want them to do. She didn't understand that. So for her, it was more about you need to do this. And if you're not doing it, then I don't want to be your friend for like a week or two. Or what have you. And that was just an immature way of dealing with things. And so one of the things you want to do is just start paying attention to how you are in your current relationships. Are you surrounded by ungodly people? One of the things I know, for example, about millionaires is that if you happen to be climbing and you're gonna be a millionaire, God, he's climbing. If you hanging around people who got a broke mindset, people who have the potential to rob, then other millionaires are not gonna want to hang around you. Even though they see your potential, they're going to stay away from you. And so who you surround yourself with is very, very important. Who you surround yourself with is very important. So one of the things you want to do is just begin to ask God to make your heart healthy and study the Word of God daily. One of the things I've done, I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, how do you want me to study your Bible? Because I've read it from cover to cover a couple of times. But I said, God, how do you want me to study? And the Lord told me, study your issues. I was like, okay. And so one of the things he's taught me to do is if you dealt with pride that day, study scriptures about pride. Memorize them. Write them down. Just go ahead and just keep saying them. And so a lot of times I'll write down 5 scriptures and I'll just go and I'll meditate on those scriptures. And so what I'm doing is I'm fighting something on the inside. And I'm doing that and getting it out. And so that's how I get strong in that area. And so if I'm dealing with offense that day, then offense is pride as well. I'm going to study scriptures about offense and study scriptures about pride. And so what I'm doing is I'm making my heart healthy. I'm helping my heart to grow for the relationships, not only that I have, because God has given me some really, I don't have a lot of people in my life, but the ones I have are absolutely amazing. They're a true blessing. But he's giving me a healthier heart for them, and he's making my heart even healthier for the relationships that are to come, including my relationship with my husband and prayerfully my children and stuff like that. So he's getting my heart to be healthy. Now in my own mindset, I feel like my heart is completely healed and healthy, but every time I start thinking like that, God will show me another issue that he's dealing with in my own heart. And so he's showing me that he's delivering me. He's renewing my mind. He's breaking stuff off of me that I didn't even know was there. And so that's what you have to do. You have to be intentional and prayerful. Let's go ahead and move on. I'm trying not to scroll with it. Okay. Do you break away from people in your life who started as Christians but are now exploring alternative religions, or do you stay to be an example of Christ that they can see? You can stay, however, you have to change access. Okay. The way that it works is this. Let's say, and I had a brother in Christ who did that, and he went away from me. He went over to the Black Hebrew Israelite religion. And this was some years ago. And this guy used to be a mentor. I mean, God used this guy to help me get delivered from a lot of stuff. This guy used to mentor me strong. It was like when I was going through something, he would just pop up and he would mentor me really strong. But he went to the Black Hebrew Israelite religion. And I knew he was a good friend, and I didn't want to let him go, and I wasn't planning to let him go. However, what drove him away was me saying I'm not crossing to that, and me correcting him, me telling him, I said, the Bible tells us that the flesh, not the glory in the flesh and the spirit they war against one another. You looking at your skin or what have you, thinking that has an inheritance. Your flesh don't have an inheritance. And I started pointing out the truth to him. And so what I used to be the mentee, all of a sudden I'm over here trying to be the mentor. And so that was enough to get him to kind of take his distance from me, because he felt like, well, you're one of the heathens that are falling away. And that's because he had went into a false religion. So I'll just say this. You can communicate, but just make sure that you don't allow the person to indoctrinate you. Don't let them throw their stuff at you. And so when they start throwing little things out there, hit it back with the truth. Hit it back with the truth and tell them, say, I love you. And say, you too smart for that. You too wise for that. God had put too much in you for you to fall for that. Come on now. God said he hates pride. Look at that religion. Tell me you don't see pride. Tell me you don't see pride. You see it. Come on, stop. And so you can talk to them or what have you. And in a lot of cases, some people, they'll go ahead and say, yeah, you're right. Let me go ahead and pray. And then there are some people who, are going to walk away from you. So I say be an example, but just be very mindful of your conversations with them. Be very mindful of your conversations. I have never had a problem with dairy or bread as a child, but now I'm told I have an allergy to them. Allergies and asthma are linked to fear, correct? What to do about it? I can't say that I've researched it like that to associate it with fear. Asthma, I can see asthma being fear because, of the manifestation, but allergies, I'm not necessarily sure about that. So I definitely just say to pray about it. My body, I think as the body goes through transitions, it changes. For me, as a child, my mom, we got WIC when I was a child. And if you got WIC back then, they used to give you these big old things of milk, and it would be cartons of milk in it. And I was so in love with milk, I didn't want nothing else mama brought into the house. I would go and grab me a carton of milk, and I was 8 years old. I would walk around, and my parents didn't say anything. I would walk around with a whole carton of milk because I was going to drink that whole carton of milk. And I would drink it, but now I'm lactose intolerant. It's crazy. Now I'm lactose intolerant. And I'm not majorly lactose intolerant. Like, I can eat a little bit of dairy without having a problem. But, man, listen. Let me get too much dairy in my system. It's going to be a wrap. And so the body does change as you grow older, unfortunately, especially if you're not exercising and stuff like that. Your body starts making different types of changes. And so I would just tell you to make sure you're exercising, you're eating right, you're being prayerful. If it's a deliverance issue, then all you have to do is go to a deliverance conference, and you'll get your deliverance. You'll get your deliverance. I divorced my ex-husband because of abuse 4 years ago. I have a child with him, and I started seeing a real change in him, so I'm back with him. But is it okay to be intimate with him? Oh, no, never, ever. Unless y'all are married, no intimacy. And then, too, if he didn't get deliverance, then there is no real change. Hear me when I say that. If he didn't get deliverance, then that spirit is still there. It's just calm. It's just waiting. It's just like, I'm going to chill. I'm going to get her back under contract, get her back under papers. So first and foremost, you want to make sure he's saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Spirit before you even entertain the idea of a relationship with him. Secondly, you want to make sure that he goes and he gets some deliverance. And then thirdly, he needs to be accountable to a leader or what have you. And fourth, lastly, you don't want to enter any type of sin with him because you legalize the spirit. The irony is most relationships that are abusive, it started off as fornication. It's like a woman legalized the spirit to come and she began to entertain that spirit. And so, yeah, don't get intimate with him at all. Keep your heart at a distance. Be really prayerful and watchful. Because the thing about it is, a lot of times when you're dealing with a man, when you done broke it off with him, he always appears to be good to get you back. And so when he realizes that you're not connected, the soul tie is not as strong, when he realizes you're not as connected, he's going to behave because it's not a big deal for you to walk away from him. it's not a big deal for you to walk away. And I've had occasions of that. I was married, going through a divorce, and it's back in 2006. I was going through a divorce, and my heart had broken up. You know, I had got to the point where my heart had finally started to break away from my ex. I had got to the point where I accepted. You know, had gone through the stages of grief. I had started accepting things as they were. I was living by myself or what have you. Then me and him decided to reconcile. We reconciled briefly, but I kept my heart at a distance. See, because the thing was, I didn't understand deliverance, but I knew to watch out for some crap. I was just like, listen, you know, what have you. And so he happened to be an abusive person. He had his ways. He was a cheater. All of those things. So I kept my heart at a distance from him. And what ended up happening was, of course, I was still sleeping with him because I had my mind made up with him. We were still married, since we were still married. And we had counseled our divorce and everything. And so, long story short, right after we counseled, he started manifesting. Right after we got intimate, he went right back. I mean, he didn't lay his hands on me at that time, but he went right back into the manipulation. He went right back into the control. He went right back into the, I'm leaving. He went right back into using the spirit of fear to control me or what have you. And I let him go. I mean, I just sat back and I just started pulling myself. I was just like, you know what, I'm not going back in there. And I just went ahead and pulled back. And so, he's going to have to go through deliverance. One of the things about an abuser, one of the spirits that has to come out is the spirit of rage. That has to come out. Anger and rage have to come out. In a lot of cases, the spirit of Jezebel has to come out of the person. So he's going to need some deliverance. And so for the most part, if he knows that your heart is somewhat distant, he's not going to show you those sides of himself. He's going to show you the sweet and loving and cute side. But when you start getting intimate, once he feels like I got you, then the abuse will start up again, guaranteed. I can tell you that with 100%, it will start. It will start. And in a lot of cases, it becomes more dangerous to get away from a man a second time than it was the first time. And I think it goes to that scripture, when an unclean spirit goes out of a man, it goes looking for rest but finding none. It says, I will go back to the place from where I came. And it goes back and he finds the place swept and everything put away. And it goes and takes 7 spirits more wicked than itself. And it's the last state of that man is worse than the first. And that's why a lot of women end up dying the second time they get with a man. You notice that? Pay attention. A lot of times women reconcile with a man and they lose their life the second time. Why? Because it becomes a lot harder. That man has already experienced what it means to lose the woman, and he knows that you can walk away. And so the next time he's like, you're not going to walk away. And so you want to make sure that he gets complete healing and deliverance from whatever happened to him in his childhood. You want to make sure he gets completely free. You don't want to entertain the thought that he's changed. He just act like he's changed. He looks like he's changed, but he hasn't changed. Unless he got delivered and he's got some counseling and stuff, he hasn't changed. It's just waiting to manifest. It's a guy. Okay, in Chicago, I want to see you on September 28th. I want to meet you guys there. I loved it. Okay, yeah, if it's a guy that's separated, it's still the same thing. Just let him be. Let him go on about his business. Let him be, and I won't even entertain it. And like I said, if he come back around and he tries this, hey, how you doing? What's up with you? And I have to speak to that mind. Like, what's up with that? Like, I don't do that kind of stuff. How do I get a renewed mind? Renewed mind is basically getting a new mind. And so, to do that, you have to allow God to give you a new mind, and for him to do that, you have to get new information in. You got to get the word of God in you. It's not something that like somebody come lay a hand on your head and you get a renewed mind. That's one of the issues at the in deliverance ministry, is that a lot of people get delivered but they don't get a new mind, and so they go back to the old systems and invite those same demons back in, and they come back with 7 spirits more wicked than themselves. And so they leave the altar not realizing that I actually do have to go and put some work in. The minister can cast out my mindset. He can cast out the demon that came in because of my mindset, or she can cast out the demon that came in because of my mindset. So in order to get a renewed mind, the Bible says study and show yourself approved. You have to study the word of God. You study that every day. You pray, you surround yourself with good godly people. You keep doing that, and over time you will get a renewed mind. The Bible says that a friend of a wise man grows wise, but a friend of a fool will be destroyed. And so get away from the foolish people, surround yourself with wise people, read their word of God even when you don't feel like it. And yeah, So let me go ahead and move on. Narcissism. Oh yeah, narcissism is the Jezebel spirit. So would it be okay to go to the preaching events he hosts even if it's awkward? I wouldn't. If somebody's acting weird with me, I'm just not going. I'm sorry. I mean, you do just pray about it and let the Lord lead you. But if somebody's acting weird with me, I'm not doing it as a punishment. I'm doing it because I don't want to make you further uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be somewhere where I'm not welcome. I don't want to be somewhere where the person is sitting there and we just sitting there like yeah. I don't want to be somewhere like that. And so for that reason, I wouldn't go. If he's hosting an event, I wouldn't go. I would just go ahead and let him be. I'd just be really prayerful or what have you. And you said he's hosting an event. Is it your leader? Because if it's a leader, then you want to really pray about that. Because it could be. It may not be that he's acting funny. You just want to, if it's your leader, you want to have a conversation. Could you do a teaching on free will and obedience? Yeah, sure. I'll give you a brief encounter with it. Just free will, of course, we know we can do what we want. However, obedience is what brings the blessings. You can be obedient without having a heart of obedience, but you do that until your heart changes. Yeah, when people start acting weird like that, I'm not gonna fool with them. I'm sorry. I'm not that person. I don't deal with fakeness. I'm not gonna deal with that. I'm not gonna, because it's witchcraft. Okay, it's a young preacher. Yeah, it's witchcraft in a lot of cases. I'm not trying to deal with that. Grown people have a conversation. And so if you're not grown enough to have a conversation, I'm gonna let you play with the kids. So you just let them be until he figures out that, hey, she's not chasing up behind me, she's not doing all this other stuff. And I found that people who do like that, they'll come to you in most cases. They'll come to you and they'll be like, hey, what's up? And when they come to me with that double-minded stuff, when they come to that, hey, I'm just like, they're like, what you looking at me like that for? You didn't speak to me for like 3 weeks, and why are you speaking now? Oh man, I'm sorry. I know I just been out of it. No, you weren't. You were talking to everybody else. You weren't out of it. You had an issue. And so for me, I'm just not that type of person. You have to communicate with me. No, I was just don't try that with me. Yeah, whatever reason, I like to be real, and I found that that's the most effective thing to do with people is when you be real with them. It is so effective because it pulls people out of their comfort zone. It pulls out that passive aggression. I'm going to deal with you where you are, or what have you. If you try to tell me some bull crap, I'm going to tell you, no, that's not it. You need to go ahead. I was just not feeling good. No, that's not it. You sitting here, you've been acting funny. You've been talking to everybody but me. Well, I felt like you were acting funny. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you come to me? I'm coming to you right now. You came up to me. So, yeah. So I'm going to have a conversation with him. How to deal with the Jezebel spirit in your leader's wife if they pastor the church. Jesus. Oh, Lord. I can see this question so many times. The reason it's funny for me is because, first and foremost, if you know this to be true. Now, don't just assume that that she has a Jezebel spirit. But if you know this to be true, God has confirmed it. Everybody knows it. She just mean and nasty to everybody. She's controlling. My question is, why would you go to the church? Like, I'm not going to sit under Jezebel for nobody. I'm sorry. I'm not sitting under Jezebel for nobody. I don't care. You can pistol whip me or whatever. I ain't sitting under Jezebel for nobody. So that would be my question, is why sit under that spirit? Why? I'm not telling you to leave your church. I am telling you to pray. I am saying, God, because here's the thing. If she got a Jezebel spirit, then hubby must have an Ahab. He must have an Ahab. That means he must be bound. Because first and foremost, there is no way that, okay, when it comes to, like, okay, my leader walks in the fire of God. He has a beautiful wife or what have you. There's no way she could be a certain way in the house without him correcting that. He's going to deal with that anytime. He's going to be like, listen, and she talks about times she's got to correct it. He's going to deal with that. But if this woman is free to come to the church and just act out, why go to that church? If she's free and she ain't being corrected and she's just walking around the church and why even go? I'm not beating you up. My question is, why go? Why go? A lot of times people say, because God hadn't told me to leave yet. Sometimes God tell you to leave by just allowing Jezebel to manifest. When you see that stuff, that kind of stuff in the church, I'm not sitting under, you understand, Jezebel is a witch. I'm not sitting under no witch. I'm just not going to do it, because Jezebel, you know, the rain don't fall on Jezebel. I mean, there's no blessing coming to Jezebel. And I'm sitting under her head, then I'm inheriting that crap that's on her life. No, thank you. I don't want that spirit. I don't want that spirit. And so with that being said, just pray. Just pray. I'm not going to try to tiptoe around it. I'm not going to try to find a way to deal with it or what have you. Every leader has to deal with, okay, for me, for example, I get married. Let's just say my husband and I, we're going places, and he got a Jezebel. God forbid that, but he going around, he acting up. Dude, listen, that ain't gonna happen for long, because we gonna have an uncomfortable, hard conversation, and it's gotta stop. It's gotta stop. And so one of my first things gonna be, I'm gonna have to take you through deliverance. I love you, baby. Either that, I'll take you to the church, and we're gonna let our leader take you through, but baby, you got to go through deliverance. Baby, I'm sorry. Yeah, so just be prayerful. Do a fast and listen to the heart of God in regards to that. I would tell you to go on a long fast. When you're dealing with Jezebel, I would go on a long fast. And when I say a long fast, I'm not saying 40 days, no food and no water, unless you know that you can do it. But I would say probably a 21-day fast, maybe, where you're just not doing any dairy or any meat or any sugars or something like that. But I would do a fast to hear the heart of God in regards to that. So you don't want to be sitting under that spirit. So again, if I'm married to a guy and we're going places and I notice he's doing that, we are going to have a talk. Because I ain't finna sit there and watch him wound the sheep because he got issues. And so that, I mean, I'll go to him in a loving way in the beginning and be like, what's up with that? What's up? Okay. So, baby, you know I love you, right? And I think it's time for another deliverance session. So can I get you to lift your hands, please? Please, in the name of Jesus, lift your hands, baby. Or if he doesn't want me to take him through deliverance, I would say, you know, hey, I want to talk to the leaders, and I want us to get some counseling, and I want you to go through deliverance. Please, I'm asking you to go through deliverance. And so, you know, that'll be that. Because I tell him, I say, because the way you're acting, it's clear that you're bound. And so we're going to have to deal with the root of whatever it is that allows you to get bound. What is going on in your heart? Ain't nothing going on. Okay, let me get past that pride spirit. Let me tell you how much I love you and how beautiful you are to me. Let me go ahead and get past that pride spirit. Let me go ahead and so we're going to deal with that thing. I ain't bringing him back out until dude gets some deliverance. And so I'm not going to bring him to allow him to wound people. And most true leaders, they won't allow their spouses, because the reality is a minister or minister's wife can have issues. They can't, I mean, because they're human, they can't have issues. However, for the most part, when you're dealing with a true leader, they will correct it. They will say, no, you don't act like that. You don't do that. You don't, I mean, they will correct that issue. If that issue is not being corrected, nah, no, because you don't want to give witchcraft room to grow or what have you. You want to cast it out. And so you want to just make sure that you're doing that. So hopefully this helped, guys. Again, I'm going to pull it up on my phone. Give me a second, guys. Alright, so I'll just show you on my leaders page. I got to download the flyer. Let me see. This right here, Chicago, September 28th through the 29th. I want to see you guys. I don't know if you can see. Here's a crazy thing. Let me go. Okay, let me go here. Alright, here we go. I forgot this camera. I can look at it in real time. Alright, give me a second. Trying to get it where it can. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Chicago 28th through the 29th. Really. Chicago 28th through the 29th. Really? Okay. Chicago 28th through the 29th. This is where you guys need to be. Chicago 28th through the 29th. So make sure that you guys come out. I would love to meet many of you there. Again, if you happen to be coming, then shoot me an email at info@anointedfire.com. I would love for some of you to travel down. This is going to be an amazing event. I would love for you guys to travel. Oh gosh, I don't know what I just did. Okay, I would love for you guys to travel down there. And if you feel uncomfortable traveling, get a friend to come with you. Make sure if you have friends in Chicago, tell them about the event as well. Tell your friends about the event as well. So I would love to see as many of you there as possible. Let me see. I think I got to all the questions. Give me a second. I'm scrolling again. I accidentally clicked off the page. And so, yeah. And now it wants to scroll slowly. Where's it going to be? It's in Chicago. I'm glad you asked. Thank you, sis. Chicago School of Revival. Not quite sure yet, but I will come back and tell you guys. I'm not quite sure yet. I don't know what building it's going to be at. So I would say follow Apostle Brian Meadows on Instagram, and so that you can see more details in regards to it. Or let's see. Yeah, so yeah, follow him on Instagram to see. I don't know what building we're going to be at right now, but I know that you can go ahead and register at the schoolofrevival.org. You can register there. And so guys, listen, don't get caught off guard and say, well, I want to come, or don't make excuses and stuff like that. I want to see you guys there, especially if you're in the Chicago area, because I hadn't been to Chicago in a minute, and I can't wait to go. And so I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to meet you guys. I hope I've answered your questions. I love you guys, and I'll be talking to you again next Thursday. I can't wait to come back out and talk to you guys again. One of the things I always tell you guys is if you want to sow a seed, you are more than welcome. Go to tiffanybuckner.com, or you can cash app $ anointed fire. Make sure that's one N, ANOINTED fire.com. And just to say thank you for those of you who do so. So you can sow, what have you. And so next week we'll be back. If you got a topic that you would like to talk about, make sure that you let me know. I do have 2 new drops that are going to be coming out, 2 messages that are going to be coming out. I'm going to be posting them up on Selfie within the next couple of days. I'm trying to look at the title of them again. Give me a second. What is the name of that thing? Okay, I don't even remember the title. I got 2 drops that's coming on Selfie. So they're going to be a blessing to you guys. Anyhow, I love y'all, and I'm going to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.